Oh, okay. I'm not worried about it.
All right, let one of the Christians introduce themselves now.
I was a little mixed up on when this was. I was a little mixed up on when this was starting. So just give me 1 sec to prepare here.
No problem.
All right,
Yeah, we're just jabbering.
All right. Well, I can introduce myself. My name is Daniel. I am a Canadian Baptist. I am obviously against Islam, Christian. Yeah, no social media to plug or anything.
Really?
I generally stay away from.
Well, are you gonna apologize for that to the people in the room?
Yes, I do apologize for being Canadian as well.
Alrighty.
Oh,
I'm Sophie Tyre. You can just call me Tyre. I'm Sunni Muslim. I consider King Tyre _ It's in my bio. If you want to follow me on Twitter, that's where I am.
Cool.
all right. So we're just doing a little brief introductions there. Excuse me.
Yeah, well, nothing. Yes, it's fairly informal here. No timers, no nothing. Unless I get impatient, then I'll say something.
Yeah, I was texted rules where it was like 10-minute openings. So we're going to do that later.
Oh, I wasn't even texted the rules.
Well, it don't matter. It really don't matter how it goes.
No, I was just, if that's what you guys, if you want to do 10-minute openings, have you talked with your partner about that and things? How does it work with two people?
Well, we've been talking back and forth. Let's keep it casual at the moment. So I'll just say what was that noise? Okay, never mind. Sorry, I had an alarm clock set.
Sure.
Yeah, so I'm a Christian. I'm a Catholic. I debate around on Discord, and that's really it. That's the briefest introduction.
Do you have a YouTube to plug or anything?
No.
All right, no problem. Well, who decided to go first? Did anybody decide to go first? No? What group is going to go first?
What are we doing here? Are we doing 10-minute openings? Because there's 4 people.
If you guys want to do that, it's up to it's up to you. 10-minute opening per group probably would be better. So that would be like each, 5 minutes per person. If you would have been, you might want to text amongst each other or chat amongst your teammate for a minute or two. It's up to you.
No problem. What is the proposition of the debate? It's Christianity's true. Like, so the affirmative should go first, or do we want to take turns?
Well, you guys figured it out. All right.
Sure. All right. So
you're asking the others in the group, yeah.
You guys recording?
I didn't go by what. I'm not, but I think you are. Aren't you? You got your other account in here. Yeah, you're recording it. So.
Yeah, hopefully it's working. I don't do it often.
Well, you can stop it and check it, see if it recorded. Give you a second to make sure it's working.
I have 2 separate recordings going. I'm not that worried about it. So let me just go briefly. Let me go briefly and look at the. He gave me an opening spiel there. Let me pull up the proposition for the debate, and then we'll decide if we're going to take turns and stuff. Hang on here. Bear with me, guys.
No, basically it says Islam versus Christianity.
Hang on there. All right, so it says here, first you get 5 minutes to introduce yourself. We already did that. And explain each of these points. Why you're a Christian, what it means for someone to be Christian. So do you want the Christians to go first, or do you want it to take turns Christian, Muslim?
Let the Christians go first.
All right, so I'm ready to go, or if the other...
No, you can go
for
first.
it, B3.
All right, so yeah, I'm a Christian, Catholic. I take naturalism to be obviously false. I think theism is most likely to be true, and that's just on philosophical grounds. Now, as a theist, I consider Christian monotheism to have the best historical evidence, the best testimonial evidence. It has the strongest continuity with God's action and revelation in history to the Israelites and so on and so forth. Now, as a Christian, I consider the traditional church, the Catholic Church. We don't have to get into this too much because it's not a Catholic debate, but I consider the traditional Catholic Church to be the repository of the faith and tradition. It's got the greatest. It's the greatest bastion for sound philosophy and theology of Christ's life and witness in history. He's a historical reality. He's the fulfillment of God's work in history. The New Testament is highly accurate historically. It's like a set of biographies and letters and so on. It's very clear historical evidence for Christ's life and teachings. It's attested by multiple people who have written letters and gospels, corroborated by lots of historical evidence from the same time period, secular sources, Josephus, Tacitus, and so on, and among others. There's an unbroken line of continuity from Jesus himself through his apostles and disciples all the way through the present church and the church fathers. Christ's life and ministry, his crucifixion, are all affirmed by secular historians. The vast majority of current day scholarship says his life had certain key aspects that are agreed upon by everyone, whereas Islam actually denies certain crucial details of Christ's life, such as the crucifixion. They claim God made some sort of replica of Jesus to die on the cross and fooled everyone. Jesus didn't actually die. Nobody believes that amongst Christians. Nobody believes that amongst atheist scholars. It's only Islam. Islam holds that the whole world was fooled, the whole early church. Everyone's sort of a conspiracy theory that everything was corrupted. The Old Testament was corrupted. The New Testament was corrupted. Tell me how long I have left so I don't go on too long. Another 3 minutes? Is that good?
2 minutes.
2 minutes. Okay, so Christianity, it emerged at the very height of Roman power, the Roman Empire. Everyone was, sophisticated. Like you had 20 different schools of philosophy, skeptics, Stoics, and so on. There's peace throughout the entire Roman Empire. The Greek language held sway over everyone. All the first adherents to Christianity were very simple people. Their lives were transformed by Christ's teaching and resurrection. They faced martyrdom, the hands of Jews and pagans alike. They conquered the entire ancient world, convinced them all without a single shot fired, no drop of blood. They were persecuted by everyone. Even the most sophisticated Greeks of all different beliefs bowed the knee to Christ. Now, Islam, on the other hand, emerged hundreds of years later in a remote area. People who were unlettered didn't know anything. They have fundamental errors about Christianity because they were only in touch with these heresies way out on the outer borders of the Roman Empire. They believe things like Mary is part of the Trinity, Christ wasn't crucified. These are ahistorical. They're just carried off from heresies at the time. Muslims agree Christ was born to a virgin. He lived a sinless life. He promised the church that he founded would never fail. Whereas Muhammad spread his teaching by violence. He did not live an especially moral life. And there's some problems with the Islamic conception of God and stuff. We can go into that later, so I'll just wrap it up there.
That's good. Perfect. Who would like to go next? The Muslim. We want to go back and forth, right? So.
Sure. Abu Base, you want to go? You can go.
Sure. Okay. So am I basically just going to explain why I'm a Muslim?
Yeah.
Okay.
And yes. A little bit about what convinces you, I guess.
Or so yeah, I'm a Muslim, and I originally converted to Islam about 4 years ago from being agnostic. When I converted to Islam, I chose Sunni Islam because I believe Shia Islam is full of polytheism and paganism, much like how I consider other religions like Christianity, Hinduism, or whatever. And I believe that Islam has the evidence on its side in regards to Muhammad SAW being a prophet, which is his prophecies, which is, what a prophet does. He has multiple prophecies specific in time, place, and people. Obviously not all of them, but some of them are very, very specific. None of them were proven false. All of them have come true in succession, and we're just waiting basically for the end time prophecies to occur, which is very compelling. We also have numerous ahadith to confirm that he actually said these prophecies, and we have numerous ahadith narrations from people who preserve the traditions of both the Quran and the hadiths that he actually performed miracles, like the splitting of the moon, and like passing along a bowl with minimal food, and they would feed everyone. Numerous miracles like this to prove that he's also a prophet. Which, could be done even by a soothsayer, but the thing which expels the idea from that is the fact that he did prophecies, and no one has the ability to foretell the 100 completeness of the past, present, future in full detail except for God, something who exists someone who exists outside space and time in order to have details of these things, thus proving him to be a prophet of God, which is both an argument against atheism as well as Christianity and like Judaism. And in regards to the Arabs not having much contact with the outside world, and they didn't know much, this lends more credibility to Islam because it has detailed accounts of the past. And someone like Muhammad sallallahu who was unlettered couldn't have known the things which he was passed down to him. And then, many people would say, oh, well, that was just, Satan tricking him. When we actually get down to the nitty-gritty details that he couldn't have known this stuff, you could say that Satan tricked him and that we have to go to the prophecies. How do you know this stuff? And the only answer is God, because only God has knowledge of the past, present, and future like that, not Satan. And so when we couple the miracles and the prophecies and the miraculous preservation of the Quran, which we all prove through the chains of narration, an unbreakable chain and not just like one, like Homer has, or some of the stories of Alexander the Great have, where they have like maybe one, even sometimes broken chains. We have multiple chains to confirm the Quran. We have multiple chains to prove that Muhammad sallallahu actually said these prophecies and did these miracles through multiple chains of narration, which is something I believe Christianity just simply doesn't have. They don't have this chain of narration for their New Testament. They don't have this chain of narration to prove what Jesus said is actually what he said. And I've asked for multiple Christians to provide this chain of narration to actually confirm these things that Jesus actually said, and the only thing they can provide me is that this church father learned from this church father, but doesn't actually confirm the statements. Thus, I think that Christianity is very weak in terms of preserving their religion, so weak that when the Roman Empire adopted Christianity, they had to mold Christianity into the pagan culture that Europe had. Thus is why we have traditions today that Christians have, like Christmas, which was originally a pagan holiday that was Christianified, is not a word, but whatever. That just proves to you how weak the Christian tradition actually is, in my opinion. So basically, in a nutshell, and I also think that in regards to the Trinity, which is the main argument of Islam against Christianity, and there's really no way getting around this, we don't even have to go to moral. The thing which is good about Islam is we don't have to go to moral arguments regarding Christianity. We don't have to say like, oh, we disagree with like what your church fathers did, or maybe we disagree about your accounts of prophets of what
30 seconds.
We could go into much detail about that. We don't have to go there. We can just go straight to the Trinity and the fact that we believe that there is no Trinity found in the Tanakh, the Old Testament. And the fact there is no Trinity found in the Tanakh, the Old Testament, which is what the New Testament is based off of, thus nullifies the understanding of the Trinity, which is espoused by Paul and his contemporaries. And that's it.
Very good. Thank you.
All right, so I'm assuming I'm next.
Sure. You guys decide.
All right, well, you're just saying alternated and stuff, so I do the next question. All right, so I don't have much prepared, as that's kind of on short notice. Hang on.
Stop. Just back up a little from your mic. It's not clear.
Sorry? Can you hear me well now?
Yes, but
it's a bit echoey, I think, is what he's probably trying to say.
Oh, it's a bit echoey.
Yeah,
Okay,
it sounds like you're in a giant room or sitting in a bathtub or something.
You sound better than you did. I just back up a little bit, and that's fine. Whatever.
There you go.
Right, is this better now?
Yeah, it's fine. Go for it.
All right. So I don't have much. Basically, though, I believe that as Psalms 12:10 says, God preserved His word perfectly. I believe that through translation, though, there is possible errors in certain versions of the Bible, which is why I'm a King James onlyist. However, I believe that Chain of Scripture has been perfectly preserved. I believe that the Trinity exists and is valid to the Christian life. I believe that it does make perfect sense, as God is a creator of physics in itself. So to make any argument against it being irrational or not working out in any way is simply a human mindset that we have been ingrained with through science, and especially as science evolves. and knows more and more, we have had a deeper ingrained mindset to not believe in a God simply because, or simply, we don't believe in the possibility of a God breaking the barriers that we have put in place, which we have given ourselves through learning earthly physics. I believe that Jesus is the Son of God, and the Holy Spirit is the Holy Ghost and the Holy Spirit is in the Trinity as well. I also believe that Christianity has been not necessarily weak, but rather simple in comparison to other religions around the world. Even if it is through something like oral teaching from the apostles and disciples into eventually books and letters, I believe that throughout every single book written, that it has been perfectly written by inspiration of God, as 2 Timothy says, all inspiration is, or all scripture is inspired by God. Yeah, that's pretty much all I have.
Okay, I'll go now. Why am I Muslim? I'll make this really short so we can start out in the debate and stuff. Okay, I'm Muslim because out of the three Abrahamic faiths, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, Islam is the most coherent out of all of them, right? It has a coherent explanation of God. It has coherent message about all the prophets, right? Unlike the Old Testament, we do proclaim all the prophets are holy, right? We respect them. We don't say that Noah was an alcoholic and he showed his genitals, right? Astaghfirullah. We respect the prophets, and this is what Islam does. It also, the Quran itself, corrects the Bible in many instances, which is something very interesting about the Quran. And another thing the Quran does is actually represents the historical Jesus accurately, right? It shows that academics actually have looked into this. Like, you can see the different Christianities, the Pauline Christianity and the Christianity that Jesus taught. So when you examine the life of Jesus, you can see that he wouldn't actually have espoused a Pauline Christianity. And the way that the Quran portrays Jesus is actually historically accurate to what he actually did. And that's basically it, I guess. You can continue now.
Okay, I guess people want to get into it. One thing, though, is, don't talk too long and go through 10, 20 points. Try to stick to one. That way people don't have to backtrack and go through, try to refute 10 different points. It's pretty hard to do, but go for it. You want to go?
Yeah, so I started out. I started out. So let me just continue briefly for a few other problems with Islam before I reply to some of the responses. Some deeper issues with Islam are it has a concept of God that has many problems inherent in it. For example, Muslims are generally extreme voluntarists. Now, if you haven't heard of the phrase voluntarism, it comes up in the Middle Ages with someone like William of Ockham. Calvinists are largely voluntarists. It means that God is so sovereign that he could have made murder good. He could have made 2 + 2 = 5. His nature is basically pure will. It's capricious. It's something we all have to submit to it. There's no predicting him. We're his servants. He is pure will, and that's it. The Islamic conception of heaven is basically just carnal. Like, it's something that would appeal to the Arabs of the time. It's just you get lots of fruit, you get lots of versions. I don't want to make this too polemic, but I mean, that's what you get. You get lots of versions, you get anything you want, and you're basically rewarded with heaven for your good behavior. It's a very basic, straightforward thing. You do some good works, you get your rewards, and that's it. You're the slave of Allah, and whatever he says goes. Doesn't matter if he makes math wrong. Doesn't matter if he makes murder good, so on. So, on the other hand, Christ said to us, we are to be his friends. We're not his servants. We're his friends. We're in union with him. God has renewed the bonds that Adam broke. He's coming to save creation. He's come to restore it. We're in spiritual union with him in heaven, and also even in our human flesh, he's restored that to us through the incarnation, by becoming flesh with us. So everything Adam did wrong, Christ came and set right. He cleansed us of our sins by his perfect sacrifice, and through union with him, the divine has joined the creation and restored it. Now, one more problem with Islam is it lacks the concept of love in God, right? So every idea of God has certain essential attributes. And I would say one of those has to be love. But if God is purely Unitarian, right? If God doesn't have any sort of relations in and of himself, and this brings up the Trinity, if he's just a Unitarian act of pure will, and he's free not to create, then it can't be said that he has an essential property of love, because what does that mean? He's just alone, right? On the other hand, the Trinity, while it does retain God as one being with one nature, it also secures love as an essential attribute of divinity, because in the internal nature of the Trinity, there are certain relations, like between Father, Son, and Spirit, as the New Testament says. So that was the rest of my opening statement. Now I could reply to other things that were brought up, or we can have someone else go.
Sure. I think we can have Abu Base go, and then I'll let Dan make some responses, and I can reply to him.
Yeah, let's go in order. One out of the four people, let's continue to go in order if possible.
Okay, wait, am I responding? So am I responding to the points raised?
Sure.
Well, you had your opening statement. We all had ours, and I raised some new points.
Yeah, I suggest you try to stick to 1 or 2 points at a time. Like having too many is a
okay. So do you guys
a problem?
You guys want to go to a shorter thing now?
A shorter thing?
In other words, like after those opening statements, because I went on at length there, 3 or 4 minutes. So do you want it to make it shorter statements now?
No, just saying if people go to rebut, it's do we make sure. I think if you make the rebuttals too long, things get lost. It's up to you guys, though, right?
So do rebuttals. Just focus on 1 point, and then let the
1 or 2. Yeah. I just
made the claims an opportunity to respond to them.
Yeah,
that's what I think.
That's right.
Okay, Blue Base, you're up.
Okay, sure. So I can't remember who made the statement. I think it was Dan the Man, or it was B33, that logic doesn't disprove the Trinity, right? And I agree that human logic doesn't disprove the Trinity. What I believe disproves the Trinity is Scripture itself. I don't think there's any Trinitarian view within the Tanakh, and if it was, it would have been clearly stated. If all the prophets taught it, it would have been clearly stated by at least one of them, and I don't find any one of them teaching it. And in regards to a error in the Quran where it says that Mary's a part of the Trinity, it doesn't say Mary's a part of the Trinity. All it says is that Christians took Mary as an ilah, something as like an object of worship, right? So that doesn't necessitate that it's a part of the Trinity, because we also believe that Catholics take their saints as worship. Of course, Catholics would disagree with that, I understand. But for us as Muslims, we think that dua, which is supplication to something, right? Whether it be praying through something or to something, if you make dua, supplication to anything other than God, that is polytheism. So that is what's meant in the verse. It's not necessitating that it's part of the Trinity. It's just saying that the Christians at Muhammad Sallallahu time worship Mary, and that was through their dua, the supplication. We believe that Catholics still do the same thing today, so it's not an error. And in virgins in heaven and like materialistic goods, yes, we believe in that. Alhamdulillah, that's good. I believe men should like sexual intercourse with women. I don't think men should like sexual intercourse with men. Okay, that'd be ridiculous and it's disgusting. But sexual intercourse with women, alhamdulillah. I mean, Christians and Jews believe that you get whatever you want in heaven, right? So if someone wants virgins in heaven, alhamdulillah, go ahead. You're in heaven. If you want to drink wine in heaven, go ahead. It's fine. You're in heaven now because you passed the test. So I don't see any issue in liking sexual intercourse. And in regards to, we believe that, if Allah made math wrong or if he made murder good, I mean, these are just hypothetical situations, which it just doesn't really prove or disprove anything, because that's not the way it is. So if that's not the way it is, I think it's useless to bring that up, right? And in regards to that Muslims, it's not an obligation for them to love God. Of course it's an obligation for them to love God, and they have to love Islam. In fact, it's a condition, because there's 7 conditions in the Shahada. That's the first pillar of Islam. And there's 7 conditions for you to actually fulfill that. One of them is love. You have to love Allah, and you have to love the Shahada you're taking. You have to love Islam. So love is indeed a part of it. Yes? And we do, of course, love Allah. Huh?
Oh, can I make a brief clarification?
Sure.
Yeah, so I didn't say you're not commanded to love God. What I said was that in your conception of God, there's no attribute of love within God and of himself, essentially, right? Because God could be alone without creation. He doesn't have to create. And there is no communion within God because he's just totally Unitarian. And so if we take love to be an essential attribute of God, there is no love in Allah because he's just alone. He doesn't have the Trinity.
No, that's incorrect because God literally says that he loves the believers. So if he loves the believers, then obviously loving is a part of what he does.
Well, I said his essential attributes. He didn't have to create any believers.
Well, yeah, he didn't have to.
Right.
I don't get your point.
Yeah, so in and of his own nature, his essential nature, he didn't have to create. There's no communion within him of multiple relations of persons, right? So on his own, if he didn't create, and this is certainly a possibility, you just agreed yourself to it, there is no love. It's just him.
Okay, so we have a concept that even like before Allah created, he was still the creator, right? He has attributes and names to go with those attributes. I don't really see an issue with him being like he doesn't need a creation. Of course, we don't think he needs a creation. He chose to create. So, as it says in the Quran, so man and jinn worship him. And of course, he already said that he loves the believers. So I don't really see an issue that's being brought up.
All right. Well, we have two other people. So, do you want to go back and forth, or do you want them to talk? Because I can go back and forth on this with you, but there's other people who want to get their replies in.
Sure, other people can go.
All right. So regarding the Trinity, first off, Paul the Apostle talked about the Trinity in Colossians 1:3, as he says, Jesus upholds the universe by the word of his power. Matthew, who was with Jesus constantly, talked about the Trinity in Matthew 1:23, saying Jesus is Emmanuel, God with us, etc. So there are people that were in acquaintances with Jesus who talked about the Trinity. Now you can say that is has been aired through years of incorrect translation and stuff. That's a whole other topic to get into, though.
Okay. Can I respond to that? Or I have a question about that. Why didn't Jesus ever espouse this core theology of the Trinity? Right? He never espoused it in the four Gospels that you have. He doesn't do that. And you have to appeal to these.
Do you want to take that, Dan, or me?
I'm responding to Dan.
You can go ahead.
Right. So Muslims believe in progressive revelation, right? They say the Old Testament is corrupted, the New Testament is corrupted. Muhammad comes and says things that were never taught in the Old Testament, pray 5 times a day, etc., etc. So we all agree on progressive revelation. If you go back to the Old Testament, there is indication of multiplicity in the divine, in the divinity, right? So God says we made man in our image, and there's also indications where the angel of the Lord comes down. That's God, right? But God's not material, so who is that, right? It's also Melchizedek, who the people of Israel tithe to. Now, you guys get to pick and choose the stuff in the Old Testament that you accept because it's selective. You just say, oh, this part's corrupted, that part's not, because you want it to conform with Muhammad's teaching, right? So you have carte blanche to just say anything's false or true in the Old and the New Testament, whereas as Christians, we have to abide by the entirety of the Old and the New Testament. We have to make them coherent together. Well, you don't have that obligation. So, there's certainly indications in the Old Testament as well as the New, because in the New Testament and in the book of Acts, of course, the Gospels, the book of Acts, God is one. We affirm God is one, but there's also the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. And so the church councils over history have tried to hammer out exactly what this means, but there's obviously indications both in the Old and the New Testament that God is more than a singular Unitarian being.
Sure. Can you give some examples in the Old Testament? And this is Abu Base's specialty, so I'll let him respond. If you can just give some examples in the Old Testament of God being more than one.
Yeah, I already mentioned one. He says we've made man in our image. So that's one. Another one would be when the angel of the Lord comes, and there's different passages that refer to the same event, where in one case it says this is God. In another case it says it's the angel of the Lord. We might take that to be the Holy Spirit. Those are just two.
Okay, Abu Base, you want to respond to that?
Okay, so you said that the word Elohim, right, includes there's plurality within his essence, right?
I wouldn't say essence. I'm a Thomist. I'd say that within the Godhead itself, within divinity, there is multiplicity of relations, but the essence is singular. There's one essence of God, one will, one nature, but there are relations of opposition. It's getting a little esoteric, so I'll just leave it there.
Okay. So in order to understand that, you could actually go to, do you know who Ibn Ezra is?
I don't know Ibn Ezra.
Okay. Ibn Ezra is literally one of the leading scholars of Hebrew linguistics, which Jews go to actually learn linguistics from him, especially in terms of Tanakh. So in this term, Elohim, and if you look at the commentaries by the Chachamim, the Jewish rabbis, old and new, they say, in this verse, the created appears in the singular form, right? And obviously, the word you're picking is Elohim. So, if "let us make man" indicates a new numerical plurality, it would be followed by the next verse, "and they created man in their image," right? Obviously, the plural form is used in the same way as the divine appellation Elohim to indicate the all-inclusiveness of God's attributes of authority and power, the plurality of majesty. So, Hebrew and Arabic are very close languages. And in Arabic, we do have something called the plurality of majesty, where, as in, God refers to himself in the plural, right? And Elohim isn't really restricted to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. No, it's just plural. It's the plural of majesty. This is how Ibn Ezra describes it. This is how many other Hebrew Jewish linguists actually describe this word, right? So, it is customary for one in authority to speak of himself as if he were a plurality, right? This is the same in Arabic, and it's the same in Hebrew. Probably the same in Aramaic. I don't know, but probably. But I do know that the plural of majesty is in Hebrew. And you can literally go ask any Hebrew speaker, and they will give you this reasoning. So that's what I would say to that.
Okay, yeah. So I'm not a scholar of languages, Hebrew or Greek or any of these. I'm just some guy in Discord, just like you, right? So if you wanna post a link to those scholars, I'm happy to read them. I won't push the point further. It just on the normal reading of the translations, it says us, so I take that for granted. What do you accept divine simplicity?
Well, describe divine simplicity, so I don't agree to something that I don't agree with.
Right, divine simplicity is the doctrine that's shared amongst Jews, Christians, Muslims for most of history. There's different ways of cashing it out, but it just means that God is very simple in himself. Like, he's the most simple thing that can be. He's not composite, not made of things. So when we refer to God in different terms, power, mercy, like you said, there's many names of God. That's just a human way of speaking and understanding in a finite way, but God himself is ultimately simple. So what does it mean when you say to me that God is plural? What does that mean?
When I say that, first of all, I didn't say that God is plural. I'm saying that God refers himself in the plural form. Because if you look at the Hebrew, and this happens in Arabic, where if you went to the Quran, God says, we did this, we did that, it says it multiple times, but you find no shuyukh, Islamic scholars, saying that this means a plural in people or entities, whatever. Yet the plurality, the plurality of majesty exists there. The plural actually exists there. So why aren't we getting the idea that Allah, God, is plural? It's because that this is referring to a plurality of majesty. And again, this is going heavily into linguistics. If we don't want to continue this point, that's fine. We can talk about it later.
Yeah, I'll just say we'll do. Go on. We'll do one more back and forth, and then we'll let the other two go.
Sure.
Okay.
So you're actually conceding the point that God does refer to himself in the plural, but you have a certain interpretation of that, whereas other scholars, Jewish and Christian, have a different interpretation.
It's a Jewish interpretation, bro.
Well, yeah. So, what we would say is that the Jews they interpret that as the plurality of majesty because this is what was passed in their oral tradition, right? Which they claim goes all the way back to Mount Sinai, and they all understood.
You don't accept that, though,
huh? So, for Muslims, this goes back to, one of your points regarding that we believe that the scriptures are corrupted. We believe that they're corrupted, including their oral Torah and their oral traditions, but we believe that there is chains of narration that do exist. I've seen them myself, the chains of narration that Jews have that go all the way back to Mount Sinai. They do. But the issue is that we believe that some people in the chain were either dishonest or corrupted it, and we can see that through the belief of Tikkun Sofrim, which that's why we reject the preservation of the Tanakh. And possibly the oral Torah. So some of it may be preserved and some of it might not be. All I'm saying is that when I look at the oral Torah, all I see or just the oral traditions, even the Midrash, I just see all the rabbis agreeing that this is referring to just one God. They never say it's gods.
A lot of what you're referring to comes after Christianity. This is when the Jews and Christians had already broke off from each other. They're already having an acrimonious relationship. So it's a little convoluted there. Just before we turn it over to other people, I want to make 2 points. So, not points, just I want to register 2 facts. You said there is no contradiction in the idea of the Trinity. I thought someone said that. You or the other. And also, God does refer to himself in the plural. And if you agree to those both, then we can turn it over to the other 2.
So I never said there isn't a contradiction within the Trinity. I do believe there is a contradiction within the Trinity. It's just I don't believe that someone who just believes in one God, not a Trinity, I don't believe you can go up to a Christian and just say, this logically doesn't make sense and that disproves the Trinity. I don't think you can do that because you have to just work from Scripture. That's what I said. I do believe there's a contradiction, but I don't believe that will completely, obviously I believe it disproves the Trinity, but if we're looking at if we're just looking at we just go by Scripture, obviously if we go by what your book has today, we can find traces of the Trinity in your New Testament, right? But we would just respond with, we don't believe your New Testament's been preserved. That's why I don't really pay much attention to it.
Yeah, so there's so many ways to respond, but maybe I'll hold them off and let these other 2 get their 5 minutes in, and then we go back to the other disputes.
Sure.
Finish the point. I asked a question last time. Jesus doesn't ever teach the core doctrine of the Trinity in the New Testament, and someone else responded. But this is me and Dan the Man who have a dialogue here, if you want, Dan, because you're part of this debate too. So I'm quoting Mark 12, verse 28 to 35. Where Jesus teaches the most important commandment, which is, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one." Right? And this is in a conversation with a person.
Okay,
Mark 12, verse 28 to 35.
You got a Bible bot, or should I pull that up for Dan?
It's in BC text. You can post it. I'll
right,
post
cool.
it again.
Go on.
And I posted it. So here, someone asks Jesus, "What's the most important commandment?" Right? And Jesus answers with that, "Hear, O Israel, our Lord, our God is one," right? He doesn't say to believe in 3 persons that are co-equal. The Father is not the Son is not the Holy Spirit. He doesn't say that. And he allows this Jewish person to walk away knowing this, right? So that's the most important commandment according to Jesus. And you're appealing to the so-called disciples of Jesus that you have in these books. So where does Jesus explicitly state the core doctrines of the Trinity in the New Testament? And if he didn't, then why didn't he say it? That's my question.
Yeah, I already. Dan, do you want to reply to that, or should I?
I can attempt to reply. All right. So Matthew 28:19, he said, "Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit." This clearly states that there are 3 parts of the Trinity, and through multiple different books of the Bible, we can kind of piece together how the entire Trinity works, such as John 10:30, "I and the Father are one." Just throughout all the New Testament, we can piece together the Trinity. B3, if you want to take it from there.
Yeah, I'll just follow up on that. In the first place, I already said that Muslims affirm the progressive revelation. They say that things that were not revealed earlier are revealed later, right? So it may not have been totally explicit in the old, or it is in the new, just as Muhammad came up with his own teachings, right? So we all agree on progressive revelation. So that's not an issue. We have to put that aside, right? Secondly, in terms of... Give me 1 moment here. Pick it up, Muslim.
Okay, so can I just add a correction? Okay, so the progressive revelation thing, as Muslims, we believe there's a progressive revelation in terms of laws. So as in, different areas of the world would have had a different sharia, right? That would fit their time and place and people. right? And then we believe that the Sharia that came with Muhammad sallallahu that this is the one which is meant for all mankind. We believe that there is a progressive revelation in terms of like laws, of hukum, laws. But we don't believe there's a progressive revelation in something we call aqidah, which is creed. So we don't believe that God would ever change aqidah. Like that has been remaining the same and the same message ever since Adam alayhi salam. It never changed. So progressive revelation for us in terms of aqidah creed, that doesn't work here. Yeah. That's only for laws.
Jesus
only for laws. I got it.
Abraham believed God is one. Prophet Muhammad believed God is one. But you guys believe God is one, but he's three persons. And this is not
now you guys at all. Now you guys take Christ to be born of a virgin, right?
Yes.
Okay. He's a prophet?
Yes.
Now, in the Gospel of John, he's a disciple of Christ, direct disciple of Christ. He stood at the cross. Now, he opens his Gospel. He says, in the beginning there was God, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And, of course, the translation of the word means logos, right? This brings in, like, Greek concepts of philosophy. It was written in Greek. So you have to hold the view that the direct apostles of Jesus Christ, the men who lived with him, and saw everything he did, you have to hold the view that these people were immediately corrupted. Like, that seems to completely ad hoc. You're saying there's some sort of conspiracy or deception?
No. Well, you're assuming that John wrote John, right? How do you know that?
Well, why do you assume he didn't?
Well, because John never says he wrote John in John, right? He never claims authorship of John.
So who do you think wrote John?
Honestly, I just think it's a collection of stories at the time that were being passed around. Right, it's not that it's an anonymous author. No one knows. No one academic knows who wrote John. That's the truth.
Sure. So why did the early church attribute the Gospel of John to John?
Well, they didn't really, because at the time of Paul, they didn't really know who. They didn't really consider these Gospels scripture, right? And it was later these books, these four Gospels, they were ascribed to the disciples of Jesus. Anything to do with the writing of John, because he's just a poor fisherman, right? He's illiterate.
Well, the question was why do you think that he didn't have any? I mean, it's not as if 500 years went by as with Islam. These are within the first, second generation. Why would you think that they wouldn't know who wrote the Gospels?
Because the earliest manuscripts, they don't have any claim of authorship on them at all, and you're appealing to church fathers who had nothing to do. They didn't see John. It's just hearsay, right? He said, she said, but you don't know who's in the chain. You don't know. They're not a reliable source of information, right?
Let's be very careful, and let's be very precise, right? So the Gospels and the epistles, especially Paul's epistles, like these are within 5 to 20 years. Some of them, Mark, some of Paul's letters. These are very well attested historical documents. Like this, compared to other ancient history, these are great documents. They're within 1 or 2 generations. So, if the church, there's an unbroken line of continuity between the apostles and their immediate disciples. For example, like right after John, you had his follower Polycarp, and there's no break in the tradition. So if the church says these are the men who wrote the Gospels, they knew which Bible was true. You have to have some argument for why you think they're corrupted and why God would allow. I mean, you guys take Jesus to be born of a virgin and a prophet. So Jesus said the church will never fail, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. So if you're going to come up with a conspiracy theory that says everything was corrupted immediately, you need some argument for that.
All right, we don't believe everything was corrupted. How we judge the previous scripture is using the Quran as our lens, as our view. Right? So when Jesus says, "Hear, O Israel, our Lord, our God is one," that's probably a statement that Jesus made in the Injil, right? We have no problem rejecting or denying that, right? It's a core doctrine. So we use the Quran as their standard in viewing the previous scripture. So when you see
so why do you
like that?
Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
We can see the true teachings of Jesus come out of the Gospels. So we use the Quran as our standard. That's it.
So why do you take the Quran to be incorruptible, whereas you reject the New Testament fathers, the Old. What is your criteria to reject the Old Testament and the New, and then say Muhammad is perfect?
Wait, you want to answer, or should I answer?
Sure, I can go. I just want to say that, by the way, I do enjoy when the debaters are not like yelling and screaming. It seems like we're having a good dialogue. I like it. But so in regards to why we take the Quran over the New Testament, is that the Quran is preserved. Like, there's not even going to be a debate about that. And every single argument I've seen against that has just been, I mean, for lack of a better word, stupid. Because we can prove that the Quran has been preserved through chains of narration. That all the qira'ats, all the qira'ats, all the recitations have been preserved through these chains of narration. We know everyone in the chain. There's not like just one chain. There's multiples of chains. Uthman burned the old manuscripts. He burned the old manuscripts that disagreed with the codex that Abu Bakr gave him, right? So, ex-Muslim, that argument doesn't work. Because we still have chains of narration. It's an oral chain, right? So we don't rely on manuscripts to prove it. We can go to manuscripts. We can go to like the Tübingen manuscripts or the Birmingham manuscripts. But ultimately, that's not our solid proof. Because again, we didn't even have the Birmingham manuscripts if you go back like 200 years ago. How'd they prove it then? We proved it through the chains of narration. That's what we rely on. And we can go to the manuscripts today, but ultimately they proved it.
So, it sounds like you trust the chains of narration within Islam, just as we Christians trust the chains of narration in Christianity.
Okay.
So what is the criteria?
I'll get to that. Don't worry, I'll get to that. So, like, in regards to okay, calm down. I thought we were having.
I'm pretty nice calm. Don't worry about that.
Like, I thought we were having a nice dialogue. I'll get to it. So in regards to...
You brought it up.
Huh?
You brought it up, so I thought you might get to it now.
I will. I just have to describe some certain things beforehand. So in regards to the New Testament, right, we don't take the New Testament because, I mean, for part of the reason is that all that Christians have are really like manuscripts that are like the size of debit cards from like the 2nd century. And like, if you go to like Papyrus P52, I mean, you can literally, everyone can Google it. It's literally the size of like a debit card, that isn't proof that's been preserved. And when we look at the chains of narration, these chains of narrations aren't for the New Testament. Therefore, that this church father learned from John, this church father learned from Peter. This isn't like they learned the entire recitation of a specific gospel in the New Testament. That's not what it is. I've looked at it myself. It's literally just this church father learned from this church father learned from this church father. Yeah? And it never lists that this is the statement that this church father gave to this church father. So we have no idea what he was saying to them. All we know is that he maybe or probably learned from them. Yeah. And again, like, I don't have a problem with that. Because like I said, like, I've looked at like the chains of narration for the Tanakh. Yeah, they have a chain narration. But I just believe someone in the chain obviously corrupted it. When I look at Tikkun Sofrim, where they think that Ezra changed it at the Great Assembly, this just confirms my belief. So something similar probably happened through the chain narration through the Christians. And again, and it's even weaker than the chain narration for the Tanakh, because the Tanakh actually has a chain narration for this rabbi learned from this rabbi, specifically the Torah, or the Tanakh. Yeah, but when we look at the chain of narration for Christians, it's not a chain of narration for the New Testament. It's a chain of narration of who learned from who, and we don't have the statements. So that's why it's very so they're daif. It wouldn't be authentic.
Do you have any evidence that you can put forward, positive evidence that the Gospels or the epistles are corrupted? What is the positive evidence for that?
Yeah, sure. So again, I know that there's actually let me actually make sure I got my verse correct. There's actually a dispute amongst biblical scholars whether 1 John 5:7 is actually a forgery or not. Just the fact that they're differing about this is kind of concerning.
There's so many things that have been...
And I don't even need to go there. Like, we can all look up 1 John 5:7. You can go look it up, and there's actually a dispute whether it's actually a forgery or not. But when I look at what Paul and the other apostles wrote in regards to the Tanakh, because again, the Christians, I'm not trying to strawman Christians right here, but Christians do believe the entire Tanakh, the Old Testament, is preserved. Like every single part of it, the Torah is completely the Word of God, and the Nevi'im and the Ketuvim, all of them have been preserved. Yeah, they were inspired by God through the prophets, right? But when I look at New Testament writers misquoting Tanakh, not understanding certain verses in the Tanakh, this is where I see major corruption. Because if they didn't understand the Tanakh, how can I trust them for the reliability of their theology? Whether this is actually what Jesus trusted. If they're misquoting the Tanakh, what stops them from misquoting Jesus?
Now, it's possible you're just wrong, that they didn't misquote it, right? That's possible. So I asked you, what's the positive evidence of corruption?
Okay, yeah, so if we look at, let's see. I'll give you an example of this. If we look at, like, you believe that Paul wrote Hebrews, right?
Well, that's disputed among Christians. As a Catholic, I think he probably did, or one of his followers wrote it in his own language, but it's not really relevant.
It is relevant. That means, like, you don't even have a firm foundation that, like, you know who wrote these books. You don't even know that, which is concerning to us. But when we look at Hebrew, let's just say hypothetically Paul wrote Hebrews, okay? Let's just hypothetically say that. When we go to Hebrews chapter 9, verse 22, and he says, in fact, the law requires that nearly everything be cleansed with blood, and without the shedding of blood, there is no forgiveness. And he's quoting Leviticus 17:11, right? Where he's quoting Leviticus 17:11. Or if we actually go to Leviticus 17:11. Okay, sorry about that. And then Leviticus books, you don't even know that, which is concerning to us. But when we look at Hebrew, let's just say hypothetically Paul wrote Hebrews, okay? Let's just hypothetically say that. When we go to Hebrews chapter 9, verse 22, and he says, in fact, the law requires that nearly everything be cleansed with blood, and without the shedding of blood, there is no forgiveness. And he's quoting Leviticus 17:11, right? Where he's quoting Leviticus 17:11. Or if we actually go to Leviticus 17:11. Okay, sorry about that. And then he's quoting Leviticus 17:11, where it says, for the life of the flesh is in blood, and I have given it to you upon the altar to make atonement for your souls, for it is the blood that maketh the atonement, right? But whoever wrote Hebrews, if it was Paul, probably was Paul, he didn't realize that these sacrifices that are to be made are not talking about all sins, because Paul thought that all sins needed to, and I'm assuming that this is one of the core doctrines of the church, and this is why Jesus had to be sacrificed according to the church, is that sins can only be forgiven through sacrifices. Which, first off, when it talks about sacrifice in the Tanakh, it's not talking about human sacrifice, it's always talking about an animal being sacrificed. So, I mean, this would almost just disqualify Jesus. If you take into consideration Leviticus 17:11, which Paul is quoting, and then you take it into account Numbers 15, and we can start at verse 22, where it says, now if, as a community, you as a community unintentionally fail to keep any of the commandments the Lord gave to Moses, any of the Lord's commandments to you through him, from the day that the Lord gave them and continuing through generations to come. And if this is done unintentionally without the community being aware of it, then as the whole community is to offer a young bull for a burnt offering as an aroma pleasing to the Lord. So obviously when we couple 17:11 with Numbers 15, we know that these sins are talking about unintentional sins. And if you actually look at some of the rulings, for example, like stealing, right? What is the atonement for stealing in the Torah? It's it's paying double that which you stole. Is there any sacrifice involved? No. The only time there's a sacrifice involved is if you felt guilty and you go and turn yourself in before you're caught. Then you can offer up a sacrifice. Yeah, that's called a guilt offering. So Paul didn't understand that the only time sacrifices are made are for unintentional sins and guilt offerings. So when I see writers of the New Testament not understanding what they're quoting, this is a huge problem. And then I can't even take what they're actually writing because they can't even get their theology straight. This is what proves corruption.
All right, so how do you know Quran and Muhammad is not also corrupt?
Wait, B3, do you want to respond to any of those points there?
No, I want the other people to be able to get involved, but I just want to ask that one question there.
Okay.
Repeat the question. Repeat the question. I'm sorry.
Yeah. How do you demarcate? How do you decide that Muhammad is not corrupt? In other words, how do you know what he said wasn't falsified immediately or later? Like, how do you figure this as opposed to the Old and New Testament?
Yeah, sure. That's a good question. So, again, this is going to go back to what I said about the chains of narration, right? So the chains of narration confirm that the statements Muhammad ﷺ actually made are actually his statements. Yeah, and there's a thing called science of hadith, where muhaddithin, scholars of hadith, actually go through each hadith, look at all the isnads. And we're not talking about like one isnad. If there's one isnad in the like for a hadith, it's going to be usually considered da'if, at the most hasan, right? But in order for something to be like sahih, it needs.
I don't know any of these. I don't know any of these Islamic terms you're using.
Oh, sorry. You're right. You're right. I should slow down. But
no, we all do that. It's okay.
Yeah. But okay. So da'if means weak. So if there's one chain of narration for like one hadith narration, this would usually be considered weak. And at the most, it would be considered like sound. At the most. And it would be like, and there's different gradings for sound. There could be like sound weak, or just sound, or sound sahih. Like Hasan Sahih means like it's sound and it's almost authentic. But if it's just one chain, it would usually be like either weak or weak sound. It's kind of weird to say that in English, but whatever. For something to be like authentic, we need like multiple chains of narration actually confirm that these people are actually reporting the same things, right? So if you have like one narration, it has like 20 different chains, which is definitely not unheard of. It's very common. We look at each one of these chains, and people who never met each other are in the chain. They only met people in the chain. Like this guy reported this guy, this reported this guy. But in another chain, this guy reported this guy, that reported this guy. Those people in the other chains probably never met each other, yet they're recording the same exact wording, right? And the way we differentiate between weak and authentic hadith is like, let's say you have 20 chains for this one hadith, and then you have one which has a different wording. Then that different one with the one with the different wording would be considered weak. It makes logical sense. So when we have these chains of narration for both the hadith narrations and the Quran, we can see that this has obviously been preserved, especially in terms of the Quran, because we literally have hundreds of chains, like literally giving like the same exact wording for the Quran in all the qira'ats. Okay. So it's definitely been preserved.
Want to respond to any of the misquotations in Hebrews?
This will be my last point before the others get a chance to talk there. You're saying something like you have a bunch of people who have had some oral tradition, and they've properly quoted the Quran, and so you think it's been preserved properly, right? Do you know who Bart Ehrman is?
Yes, I know who Bart Ehrman is. I haven't really watched any of his videos.
Well, Bart Ehrman used to be a Christian. He stopped being a Christian.
Okay.
But he says that as far as all the manuscripts, all of the documents we have from Christianity, the Gospels and so on, he says the only differentiations, the only discrepancies in these manuscripts are minor. They're like copying errors. They have nothing to do with the doctrine. So all of our copies, all of our records, all of our pieces of paper of the New Testament and the Old, they have no deviance between them, no variation that has any relevance to meaning. It's just like it's
okay.
They'll put the word or is in different spots, but other than that,
you weren't appealing to manuscripts. You were appealing to the so-called chain.
Are you part of the debate, or are you moderator? I'm not watching names here.
I'm part of the debate.
Okay, please reply then.
All right. Anyways, we're just gonna go from me, B33, and I mean also Dan the Man. You're in this debate too, so you have to talk. But notice how none of the Christians actually were able to respond to the points that Abu Base made about Hebrews misquoting the Old Testament. Please, I want you guys to try to respond to that later on. But notice how he changed his argument from the so-called chain of narrations, right? Polycarp, who supposedly was a disciple of John. How do you know that? Because he is said to have, by whom, right? So much for the unbroken chain. right? But yeah, please, Christians, if you could try to respond to the misquotations that we clearly see in the New Testament, the examples that Abu Base brought up in the Hebrews, like, please.
Can you, the blood atonement?
Before Dan goes, can you post in the chat the most crucial, the most important misquotation from Hebrews? Because you have the Septuagint, you have different translations. So I want to see if it's significant or not.
Sure.
Post in the chat there the most significant misquotation from
one
Hebrews.
Of the examples
I believe he's talking about the blood atonement, right?
Blood atonement, which is your core theology, which is debunked. Khalas, done.
You said there's a misquotation. What is the misquotation? Type it into the chat.
Let's not get hostile, Smoking Tire.
Okay.
But
it don't matter if it gets hostile. You ain't gonna win. Don't worry about it.
Dang, I'm trying to have a dialogue. Chill out, man.
Basically, I believe that Old Testament and New Testament, as they align with each other, it is not misquoted. Rather, it is justified through understanding. I believe that the blood atonement does not just go to animals, but rather just blood in general, a holy sacrifice, which is why it had to be a perfect, spotless lamb that was sacrificed on the altar. Jesus being the spotless lamb sacrifice, as he was perfect and lived a sinless life, only to take on sin for the world.
Okay. The stuff you're espousing, the theology, comes from Paul. It doesn't come from Jesus himself. So why do you consider Paul a reliable source of information?
Because Jesus died. It wasn't Jesus he did spread the gospel, obviously, prior to his death. But it was his death that resembles the Old Testament sacrifice of the pure bloodshed of a lamb. It was more than a lamb, obviously, but most commonly a lamb.
This idea that the Messiah was going to be crucified on the cross is not seen in the Old Testament at all, especially for the sins of all of man, right? No.
Well, it certainly is in Isaiah.
No, It's not. It really isn't.
You could say it really isn't, but you got to show why.
Sure, I know what you're quoting. Quote the entire passage. It's not talking about the Messiah. It's not talking about Jesus.
You're asking me to quote it, or do you know what it is?
Yeah. Quote the thing in the BC text so I can read it off.
Right. Let me. I have to pull it up. Sorry. I'm also waiting on. I'm also waiting on the issues with Hebrews here.
You posted Hebrews.
I posted it.
All right. I'm trying to do a few things at once. You guys talk for 5 minutes, and I'll come back.
Wait. No, I think we should just focus on one point at a time instead of doing two things at once.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So when we're talking about Isaiah, are we referring specifically to Isaiah 53?
Well, it's 51 through 53, yeah.
Okay, it's 51 through 53. Okay, have you read the entire book of Isaiah?
Yes.
Okay, so do you know who the servant actually is in the entire book of Isaiah? Who is the servant specified to be?
I think for the people at the time, they would have said David, right? But it's also typology.
No, they wouldn't say David because the servant is literally said in the book. There's not even rabbinic interpretation that you need to go to. It clearly states who the servant is, especially in Isaiah.
What passage?
Okay, so if you go to Isaiah 41 verses 8 through 9, it'll say that, but you, O Israel, my servant Jacob. So the servant is talking about Israel as a whole. And yet again, it says in Isaiah 44 verse 1, but hear now Jacob, my servant, and Israel, whom I have chosen. Again, it's bringing up Israel as the servant. And then it also says...
Go on. Sorry.
Okay. And then it also says in Isaiah 44, verse 21, remember these things, Jacob and Israel, for you are my servant. So any time that it's bringing up this servant, it's referring to Israel. And it's I could see why if you didn't read Isaiah and you took Isaiah 53 and you didn't read the rest of Isaiah, I could definitely see why you would think this is talking about Jesus, because it has stark parallels if you took it out of context. But when you put it in the context and read Isaiah fully, you can just see that it's talking about Israel as a whole.
Have you ever heard of a double entendre?
Yeah.
Right, so there's nothing preventing a text from referring to multiple things. That's the whole nature of typology, right?
Okay, but it's never identified to be Messiah. It's always identified to be Israel.
Read interpretation. It's called eisegesis. You're reading eisegesis. You're reading interpretation into the text that's not there. No Jew understood this text to mean the Messiah was going to die on the cross for your sins.
Well, there's actually millions of Jews who are called Messianic Jews and Jews for Jesus, and they think it's they actually avoid on purpose teaching Isaiah 51.
Previous to the time of Jesus? No, it doesn't exist.
No, what I'm saying is that what I'm saying is that current day Jews, they very much avoid teaching these passages because they're so obviously a reference to Christ.
I don't think they do.
Well, they do.
Okay, so what are we done with that discussion? Because I mean,
we can focus on.
Well, there's a lot of things on the table. I don't know if we can go on for 4 hours. Do you want to get to something different?
Sure. It's just I'm just telling you, like, go read the whole book of Isaiah, and you'll see that the servant is identified as Israel. And on top of that, if you think that 53 is talking about Jesus and that the servant described just randomly is different from the other servants that are told to be Israel in the rest of the book of Isaiah, then you would need to bring me like one actual Jewish scholar before the time of Jesus saying that this is a messianic verse. That would be compelling. Actually not even just one, because if there was a consensus, you need to bring I'd say at least 10. If this was something which is a messianic verse, you would see the majority of the rabbis before Jesus saying this is a messianic verse.
Yeah.
But
it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist.
The rabbis are an oral tradition. We don't have the majority of them. We can't even reference them.
Okay, so here's a problem. If you don't accept the oral tradition, this is actually a huge problem for Christianity. Because if you don't accept the oral tradition, is a good question, where does the Torah come from then?
I'm trying to understand what you mean. You're saying
it's a simple question. Where does the Torah come from?
I mean, the Torah is something that was written down, and the Christians as well as the Jews so pretty much agree on the books. So, what is the issue?
Okay, so here's the thing. The only way. Okay, so there's literally 0 manuscripts from the time of Moses within 1,000 years of Moses. This is 0, and the oldest manuscripts we have of the Old Testament are the Qumran manuscripts, which according to Orthodox Jews even have heresies in it. Yeah, so it obviously means that this is not the Torah that was given to Moses. So if you reject the oral tradition of the rabbis, the Torah was passed down orally, like this rabbi learned from this rabbi, this is the Torah, right? But we don't have the manuscripts, so we can only rely on the oral tradition to actually prove that this is the same Torah as revealed at Mount Sinai. So, but if you reject the oral tradition, how do you accept it?
Do you understand what the Septuagint is?
Yes, I know what the Septuagint is, the Greek translation.
So you have 70 Jewish scholars, right? That's why it's called the Septuagint, right? So 70 Jewish scholars, it's the intertestamental period under the Greek. It's the same exact set of books that are canonized amongst the early Christians, right? So there is no disagreement amongst Jews and Christians. Like the bifurcation that emerged between Jews and Christians happened after Christ, right? So if you go before Christ, then there is no disagreement between the Jews and Christians on what constitutes the canon of the Old Testament, right?
Okay, but here's the thing.
Why is this even an issue of dispute then?
Because here's the thing. If you're going to reject the oral tradition where the rabbis didn't agree that because you believe that were the Jews on the truth before Jesus?
Well, look, if you're claiming some pre-Christ rabbi said that Isaiah is not a prophecy, you have to post some information to prove that.
I didn't say it's not a prophecy. I'm saying it's not a messianic prophecy that's not talking about Jesus.
Right. So
you're saying given that you reject the oral tradition. You said you reject the oral tradition of the rabbis, right?
Well, I would say after Christ, the rabbis went off.
Okay, wait. So you accept it before Jesus?
I would say what I'm saying is that there is no disagreement between Jews and Christians in the intertestamental period, or even up to the point of Jesus Christ about which books are canon in the Old Testament. So I don't know why this is being raised.
No, it is being raised because how do you prove that the Torah you have today is the same Torah that was at the time of Jesus and the same Torah that we have today? How do you prove that?
Again, the Septuagint was written in the intertestamental period, and that's the one the Christians accept, quote. That's the one the Jews accepted at the time. So what is the issue?
But how did the Septuagint actually get written down? Like, how did they prove that the Septuagint is actually just the translation of the Torah? Where did the Torah come from before that?
Well, that would probably be look. You were referring earlier to some set of Islamic scholars who have been reliable in preserving the Quran. Right? Right now I can go write a Quran in Arabic. Suppose I speak Arabic. I can go write a Quran with all types of mistranslations, right? So all of us are in the same position, in terms of our criteria and epistemic criteria. So the only thing that's going to determine what is the accurate version is going to be the people who have preserved it, right? So Christ, the apostles, the intertestamental period, the Jews, they all agree on the Old Testament canon up until the point of Christianity. And then the Jews went off in their own direction, right? So I don't understand why this is being raised.
Okay, can I respond to that? So in regards to that, you said that you can just go write a Quran with a whole bunch of mistranslations. If you were to do that, literally every single Hafiz, every single person who's memorized the Quran would refute it and you get thrown in the trash. So
how many people on earth actually know the Quran by memory right now?
Millions. I've seen, literally at my... Name
Show me one on YouTube.
Show you one on YouTube. Yes. What are you talking about? We can literally... Yes, I can easily give to you millions of people, even kids memorize. I know someone even at my own mosque who's 12 years old who's memorized the Quran.
What I'm asking you to do is, I see all types of stuff on YouTube. It's an interesting platform, right? If you can show me one man who reads the Quran from start to finish in his memory without having to reference text, then that'll be very interesting. But I don't think you can produce that.
No, I can. Sudais. He's a very popular Hafiz, actually.
Please produce it. Please produce it.
Sure.
I'll see if there's any jump cuts or any jump scares. I doubt he did it in one sitting.
Okay, so, and actually, I mean, literally every single, Ramadan, right?
The holiday, Ramadan?
Yeah.
You just lost your partner, Dan the Man, by the way.
So, Dan the Man, okay, it's fine, whatever.
Yeah, if you guys want to give him a few minutes to come back, I'm happy to be quiet because he hasn't had enough words in.
No, I feel very incapable of this subject. I can be unprepared. I did gain a lot of inside knowledge, though, so I appreciate the conversation.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, Dan, spend any time, man.
Finding that video.
No problem.
I have a question to ask B33. So, if the surrounding evidence at the time of Paul, right, the crucifixion, resurrection, it wasn't enough to convince him to convert to Christianity without having personal experience, why should I convert to Christianity without having personal experience, right?
All right, so you're saying if Paul was not convinced prior to his vision, why should you be convinced?
Yeah, he was closest to the time of Jesus, right? And obviously the surrounding evidence wasn't enough to convince him of the resurrection and crucifixion accounts. So why should I become Christian without a personal experience?
Look, I could ask you the same question. If there was some guy around Muhammad's time who didn't see things personally, why should I be a Muslim? It's irrelevant. Christ appeared to who he appeared to. Of course, there were people who didn't see those appearances, but no one doubts, not even secular scholars doubt that people did claim to have experiences and did see the resurrected Christ, right? So if that's your criteria, if your criteria is that everyone had to see it, then you just shot yourself in your own foot.
No, that's not my criteria. It's just basically, obviously, the surrounding evidence at the time of Paul wasn't really enough to convince him to believe in Jesus without having a personal experience, which he himself doubted, right?
Look, didn't God harden Pharaoh's heart and made him not see things? So if Paul had a hardened heart at that time and he was so dedicated to his Phariseeism, right? He didn't witness it personally because Christ did not appear to everyone. He appeared to some and not others, right? So the very fact that Paul, you're actually helping my argument, right? So the very fact that Paul, who was hostile to the Christians, who perhaps ordered or killed Christians or ordered the killing of Christians, the fact that on his own road, on the road to Damascus, was struck down and blinded, and people around him saw it, then he changed. That's evidence in my case, not yours.
Well,
okay, so I think this whole argument about personal experiences, whether it be from a Muslim, whether it be from a Christian, whether it be from a Hindu, it doesn't really prove anything. People have mystical experiences literally all the time. That doesn't mean you're going to become a Hindu because some guru supposedly raised someone from the dead. Miracles aren't exactly the criteria, as in prophets can do miracles, but that doesn't necessitate that they're a prophet, because it could just be a soothsayer. What necessitates that they're a prophet is the fact that they prophesy certain things to prove that they're a prophet, and they all come with the message of monotheism, to worship God alone. So the prophecies argument is a much more concrete argument. The miracles argument, or some mystical experience that Paul had, I don't really, for lack of a better word, care. Because, again, people have mystical experiences. They think that God talks to them on the street, and then maybe God told them to, go buy bananas for a homeless guy.
So,
to go do it.
Can you name a single prophecy in the Old Testament that predicted Muhammad?
Okay, so for us, I would go to Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy 33, verse 2. Let's see this. Okay, so Deuteronomy 33, verse 2, it says, he said, the Lord came from Sinai and dawned over from Seir. He shone forth from Mount Paran. He came with myriads of holy ones from the south, from his mountain slopes. So I believe that these holy ones are referring to prophets, and obviously even the Jews admit that this means there's going to be Arab prophets, because when it says Mount Paran, like Sinai, Seir.
Yeah, but we don't know where we don't know where the Arabs were then, and people moved all the time. They were nomads. They were Bedouins. Come on.
Well, we actually do. We know that they were from the region of Kedar, which obviously stretches all the way from.
How the hell do we know? How the hell do we know during the time that Deuteronomy was written that the Arabs were there and not? This is terrible.
No, it's not terrible, because if we look at the descendants of Ishmael, and I'm pretty sure Christians admit that the descendants of Ishmael are the Arabs. Yes.
It's a new argument. You changed your old argument.
No, I didn't. It's not. No, I didn't. So if they're from the lineage of Kedar, and Kedar is known to span from around Jordan, right? You know where Jordan is, and then it spans all the way down to the Hijaz, around where Mecca and Medina are today. This is where the Arabs historically inhabited, even according to the Jews. And the Jews admit there's going to be Arab prophets. Specifically, where it mentions Mount Paran, it's talking about the Arabs, right? And it also mentions Sinai.
The way people moved in history, for all I know, the Arabs were in India then.
No, because the Tanakh always, whenever it mentions the Arabs, it's talking about people who live in the Kedarite kingdom from the lineage of Kedar, right? And that was always known to be from the transcontinental Jordan area, and then it goes down to the Hijaz. The Jews always understood it that way, even before, rabbinic Judaism or whatever. So when it says Mount Paran, it's talking about the Arabs. The dispute that we would have with Jews is Jews say that these are going to be different Arab prophets, not talking about Muhammad ﷺ, but they still admit that this means there's going to be prophets coming from the Arabs. Even according to Jewish oral tradition, there was 1,240,000 prophets.
The most powerful Arab prophet to come out of that region is Prophet Muhammad. Full stop. That's it. He's.
I find this extremely weak. Is this your only example of a prophecy in the Old Testament?
Strong.
This is not extremely weak. Okay, because Jews, they believe that Malachi was the last prophet, right? But you believe that Jesus, I don't know if you agree with the word prophet, but whatever. You believe he was the last messenger sent to seal up the deal. So I want you to bring me one Arab prophet before the time of Jesus that came. Because this verse obviously said there's going to be a prophet from the Arabs.
Well, I disagree with your interpretation of Deuteronomy there. So my question was to you before you asked your question to me. My question was, is that the only prophecy you have of Muhammad? Because it's extremely weak.
How is that? How is that weak? It literally
because
says that
no way to
myriad of holy ones from the south. Some prophets coming from these regions.
It says depending on
right. So what are the first of all, I'd say what are the myriad? Because you only mentioned Muhammad, right? So that's not a myriad. That's one.
Okay, then it says Sinai and Seir. There was other prophets from these other regions.
I'm sorry. Say again.
It says Sinai and Seir. It doesn't only talk about an Arab prophet. It talks about people coming from Sinai. This could be talking about Moses. Seir, it could be talking about Jesus and Mount Paran. We think it's talking about Muhammad.
So then it might entirely exclude the Arabs.
No, it doesn't exclude the Arabs because it says Mount Paran.
It might.
What do you mean it might? It says Mount Paran.
This is like trying to hang a heavy hat on a screw that's barely even in the wall.
That's subjective, but again, it says Mount Paran.
Is that your only prophecy? Do you have others?
I bring up this one because this is the most clear-cut one. Like,
do you have a second one, or is that it?
This is the one I bring up. Yeah. I've had discussions if Isaiah 42 is talking about Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I don't know at this point because again, Israel's identified as a servant.
You have one extremely weak one.
One is, what do you mean weak? What's weak according to you is subjective. I don't care whether you think it's weak or not. It says Mount Paran. It says myriad of holy ones coming from the south, from the mountain slopes. You can literally go to the Midrash. This is talking about prophets coming from these regions.
But you just said the myriad refers to people who aren't even Arabs. So presumably, then, by logic, we could say that none of them were Arabs. This is very weak.
Wait. So are you saying there's myriad of holy ones from the south, right? Guess what's south of Israel? It's the Canaanite kingdom. But if you say that the myriad of holy ones line excludes the Arabs, that means it would disclude Sinai and Seir, which means you would disclude like Moses. That doesn't make any sense.
Well, this goes back to my point that just because there's a certain place that people live in now doesn't mean we know where they used to live. And you're the one who said that Moses would be included in that criterion.
No. I have this on recording. I did say that Moses was the one mentioned when it says Sinai. I mentioned that.
Is Moses an Arab?
No, it's not exclusively talking about Arabs. It says Sinai. Right. It's just saying different regions where these Arabs are going to come from.
Right.
Or not Arabs,
there's nothing in Deuteronomy that says Arabs, right? So you already admitted that.
It says Mount Paran.
All right, but who knows who lived in Mount Paran in the time of Deuteronomy?
Mount Paran is referring to the Arabs.
How do you know that?
Because this is how the Chachamim interpreted this verse, even before Jesus. I don't know
what that word means.
It means that, like, Jewish scholars, right, they interpreted this verse to mean prophets, and Mount Paran to mean Arabs.
But where in the Jewish, whatever you refer to, some word, where do they refer to these people as Arabs?
Okay, Mount Paran being Arabs? I've literally spoken to multiple Orthodox Jews about this. They also admit that Mount Paran is referring to Arabs.
Neither one of us take Orthodox Jews seriously.
Okay, so, but I take, whenever, example. When I talk to Christians, I ask for their arguments against Jews regarding Jesus being the Messiah. And when I hear Christians saying Daniel chapter 9, I'm like, yeah, it's pretty epic. And then whenever I want to ask Jews about their arguments for Christianity, and they refute Isaiah 53 referring to the Messiah, epic. Okay, I take both sides, right? And I go with what the evidence says.
I'm glad it's epic, but I asked you for the strongest 2 or 1 examples of prophecy. What you gave is incredibly weak. It can be interpreted in multiple ways.
Hold on.
No, it's not.
What's your understanding of the verses? Who came from Mount Paran with 10,000 saints and a fiery law in his right hand? Who fulfilled this prophecy?
Repeat that. You cut out. Sorry.
All right. Who fulfilled this prophecy? Who came from Mount Paran with 10,000 saints and a fiery law in his right hand? Who did it?
I'm going to look up Mount Paran and the 10,000 saints. You tell me who you think did it.
Prophet Muhammad clearly.
How do you know he had 10,000 people?
Because the hadiths talk about him having 10,000 disciples.
Now, do you take the hadiths to be inspired and accurate in all cases?
They're a reliable source of information.
And not in all cases, but if they, like I said earlier, if they have authentic chains of narration, then yes, we take them.
Right, so you pick and choose. Not only do you pick and choose. Wait. Not only do you pick and choose the Old and New Testament, you also pick and choose your own shit.
What do you mean? It's what do you mean? Do you not? How are you not understanding this? I literally explained how chains of narration work.
Well, explain it again, please.
Okay, so again, let's say we have a hadith and it has one chain, right? This is enough to just say it's da'if, weak, because
I don't know these words, dude. Come on.
I just said the word weak. Isn't that English?
Da'if. Da'if. I don't know what that means.
And then I said weak. Okay, whatever. So
I get it now. I get it now. Go ahead.
Okay. So the hadith would be considered weak if it's only one chain because we have nothing to compare it to, right? But if we have a hadith which has literally 20 chains and they all say the same thing and people in the chain didn't meet other people in the other chain yet they're reporting the same information, this would be enough to make it authentic. And this just logically follows, right? So if we have hadith that have like 20 different, 30 different chains, and they're all saying the same thing, this is enough to make it authentic.
Yes, but
yeah, I would say the same thing about the church fathers. You'd reject it, though.
No, the church
okay, but
fathers
I
aren't
literally just
reliable.
explained the church fathers. So the church fathers, your chains of narration for the church fathers aren't statements of Jesus. It's this church father learned from this church father from this church father. It's not saying that this church father heard this from Jesus and then reported it to another church father. It's only who learned from which church father. And we don't have detailed biographies of these people. We don't know if they're trustworthy.
Now, let me be upfront. I don't know everything about Islam. So are you saying that in these chains of narration, they all get it directly from Muhammad, and it's not passed on?
Yes, they get it from Muhammad.
How do they speak to Muhammad hundreds of years later?
What do you mean?
You just said that these chains of narration, each person.
Okay. I see. Yeah, okay. So what happens is, here's how chain narration works. That Muhammad says one thing to his companions, this companion narrates that to another companion, and other people who were at the scene would narrate it to other companions, right? And this would start multiple chains, and they're all saying the same thing. And you go down like 50 years.
It's the exact same thing of the church father.
No, it's not, because these are statements. What your church fathers record are not statements. They're just who learned from who. That's it.
It's not the hadiths and your church fathers. Not
the church fathers. The church fathers quote plenty of statements, and they have different chains of custody to different apostles. So it's the exact same thing.
No, I've looked at the chains. They'll quote some statements, but they never have a chain of narration to confirm these statements. It's just this church father learned from this church father.
What is the distinguishing criteria here?
Okay, so you need to, like, when the person or the prophet, whoever, says this certain thing, you have maybe multiple people witnessing that event or that saying. They narrate it to different people and they get a chain going, right? And then these different chains are reporting the same exact wording, thus confirming what the person actually said is actually authentic. But in the case of church fathers, it isn't statements, it's who learned from who. It's not the same thing.
It seems to me to be the same thing. So you're saying, like, for example, you have 4 different Gospels. Presumably, they're written in different styles. They each have a different name attached to them that the church affirmed in the very early period within the first few generations. Way better than anything in other secular history of the same time. So you have four Gospels, each independently attested, and then each of these apostles, each of these Gospel writers has their own chain independent of apostles and successors. So, for example, Polycarp comes after John. Mark has his own chain of church fathers, and so does Matthew and Luke. Luke was the traveling companion and physician of Paul. You have Paul. You have 5 years after Christ's crucifixion, you have Paul stating the creed, so there's no time for legends to build up. And then from each of these people, you have whole different chains, independent chains of the same teaching. So to me, it seems exactly parallel. And I asked you, what's the criteria to differentiate them? You haven't answered.
No, I did answer. One is who learned from who, and the other one, which we have, are like direct statements. What you have aren't direct statements.
Direct statements. It's people passing things on to each other by testimony.
No. So I've already looked at. I've had this discussion with other Orthodox Christians. I don't know if you consider them Christians. Maybe I don't know. But I've had this discussion with other Orthodox Christians, and they gave me like Polycarp and these other like chains of narration, which were few. They were like 4 or 5, something like that.
I only 4 or 5 apostles.
Yeah, okay, but I only saw one that was unbroken. That was the one through Polycarp. And then when I looked at what Polycarp and his chain actually saw, what it actually was, I didn't find any of the church fathers saying like Jesus said this, and the chain of narration is this person narrated, this person narrated, this person narrated, this person. It doesn't say that. All it says is they just teach some stuff, and they said it's written in Scripture this and this, but it's not actually giving a chain to actually authenticate that statement. That's the issue. We have that where this is the actual statement, and it has a chain narration for that specific statement. That's the difference.
Yeah, but ultimately, you're just trusting that there's an unbroken chain. You don't have any proof.
No, we do have proof because we have literally books of hadith. Okay, yeah, that's easy. We have literally books of hadith. We have books of biographies written about these people in the chains. Literally volumes about just one person. Many of them aren't translated, so that's why many people haven't heard of them.
Yeah, but we have... Go ahead.
Okay, but I said, for example, like Imam Malik, who was from the Salaf, which is the first few generations of Muslims, he even had his own...
How do you know that?
We know that through the chains of narration. Just like how you, when you try and prove the Torah, you can only give chains of narration to prove that it was actually authentic.
Right, so that's my whole point. We're in the exact same epistemic position. We both trust our own chains.
Yes, because we have biographies written about these people proving they're trustworthy, and it was so widespread and reported that it couldn't have been a forgery.
Yeah, but all 4 Gospels are biographies, and Luke, at least, at a minimum, Luke Acts is considered by all mainstream historical scholars to be an extremely accurate book. It names the places, it names the titles, the terminology, everything. Like even mainstream atheist scholars say Luke is absolutely one of the best histories of the ancient world. Not to mention the other 3 Gospels, not to mention the letters of Paul, not to mention these other letters, not to mention all the church fathers with an unbroken line of continuity. So you still haven't identified the differentiation of criteria between how you still have not identified any differentiation of criteria. Whereas I say the church fathers are reliable, you say these Muslim scholars are reliable. You've not identified any differentia.
No, that's the straw manning, because we have literally like chains of narration. Like, I don't know if you're like thinking that we only have like one chain for like one statement. We literally have hundreds of chains in some instances for like one hadith. We've got 40 volumes of church fathers. I mean, how is it any different? Those are church fathers. Those aren't exact statements of Jesus. It's different.
Well, how do you say that? Like, I mean, what is your criteria? We're in the exact same epistemic book.
No, because your books contradict each other, and your own church fathers contradict each other in certain statements.
Yeah, and the Shia and Sunni and Salafists and Wahhabists and all these people contradict each other.
It's not addressing the point, though.
That's not addressing the point. Again, we have specific statements with chains like accompanied with them. You don't. You only have this church father learn from this church father learn from this church father. And
listen, you're a guy on the internet, just like I'm a guy on the internet.
Yeah.
So when you say you have some chain and you have some confidence in it, and I say I have some chain and I have some confidence in it, you have not given me any criteria to differentiate between those two things.
The difference between us and you is you have faith in your chains. We know our chains are reliable, right? We know.
How do you know? Whereas I only have faith. What is the differentiation criteria?
Because you have faith that each person isn't a liar. You have each person is a reliable source of information. They didn't have.
But how do you know that?
Oh, because how do we know that each of our persons in the chain is reliable? Because we have biographies about them. We know who they were.
What? Yeah, but how do you know the biography is not misrepresenting it?
I don't know about that. Abu Base, do you have an answer?
You have no clue what you're talking about, do you?
No, we do, because we have literally chains of narration to confirm those different biographies, and it's not like just one and a biography. No, I'm not, dude, Chief. The biographies that are written about these different narrators in the chain, right? The biographies includes like multitudes of different statements from people who lived at that narrator's time, and all of them confirm that this guy was trustworthy, this guy was reliable, and their statements also have chains to them. Like there's so many chains, it's unreal.
Right. Okay. So all four Gospels have similar quotes. That hundreds of church fathers have the same quotes. What is the criteria of differentiation that you're giving me? You're not giving me one. Because the different
chains of narration have like the same exact wording. So if like there's 20 different chains reporting the same exact wording, which you don't have.
We've been at this for an hour and a half. Do you want to move to a different topic?
I think we should wrap it up. I think we've passed the limitations.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. I mean, there's so much more to tackle. I'm here. I'm willing to go another hour. It's up to you guys.
It's fine. Okay. I mean, I don't really have much.
You want to elect another Christian to help you debate?
Yeah, it's kind of unfair to have two people like.
Yeah. I don't need any help. Don't worry about that. I'll give you guys a minute each per my minute, and I'll still win.
Chief, it's just a discussion.
Franklin, do you have any Q&A questions you want to ask? Does anyone have any questions to ask each individual person?
I have tons of questions here.
Okay. I mean, should we move to Q&A or should we have any more rebuttals? Because I mean, I still got rebuttals to give, but
give me your rebuttals. I'm happy to listen for 5 minutes. I'll mute myself.
Sure. So in regards, do you believe that? So it's written in the Tanakh that there will come the prophet Elijah, that you say, and the Jews say, is going to come when the Mashiach, the Messiah, comes, and that Elijah is going to say that this is the Messiah. You believe that this is talking, this is talking about John, right? John the Baptist?
Well, that's what the Bible does say, yes.
Okay, so where in the New Testament does it say that John is Elijah?
I'd have to look that up, but I think you and I both know it does say that, right?
Okay, but just can you give me a quote? Just quickly look it up.
Well, I have no problem doing that unless we already agree. That would be a waste of time, right?
Okay,
I'll look it up. Even if we already agree, I guess I'll look it up and waste time. Hang on.
There's a point to this.
Well, I mean, if you already agree with me, it's silly for me to look it up, but I'll do it anyway. I'm sitting at the computer here.
Okay, I can literally. Okay, I guess I'll just answer the question for you. So again, if we look at Matthew 11:14, it says, "And if you are willing to accept it, he is the Elijah who was to come." Right. So Matthew is identifying John the Baptist as Elijah. Right. So that's the verse that you would get to prove that John is Elijah. Do you know what John says about that?
Tell me.
John
the Apostle or John the Baptist in the Gospel?
John the Apostle, who's writing John.
Okay, tell me, please tell me.
And he said, and they asked him, and they're talking about John the Baptist here, "What then, are you Elijah?" And he, John the Baptist, said, "I am not." How do you reconcile that?
Sure, because John the Baptist is not omniscient. Like, he could just be a type of John the Baptist. He doesn't have, of Elijah. He doesn't have to necessarily know that. Christ could know it.
Okay, but it's being affirmed that he's John the Baptist, yet he himself is quoting that he's not.
Okay, well, who cares? I mean, he's not omniscient. He's not God. So if he does not happen to know that, that doesn't really bother me.
This proves
it's clearly a contradiction.
The of the gospel, right?
Okay. So,
any other objections before I get to mine?
Yes, we actually do have another objection, just for the camera. So, when Jerome, Jerome is one of the church fathers, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, letters and select works, the letters of Saint Jerome. I'm going to butcher these words, so I'm sorry. But to Pamachius, I don't know how to say that name, on the best method of translating. In Acts 7, verse 16, Luke the evangelist and companion of apostles describes Christ's first martyr, Stephen, as relating what follows in the Jewish assembly with 70 Jacob into Egypt and died himself. And our fathers were carried over into Sichem, I don't know how to pronounce that, and laid in the sepulchre. Man, you got a lot of interesting words. That Abraham bought for a sum of money of the sons of Emor, i.e. Hamor, the father of Sichem. In Genesis, this passage is quite differently given, for it is Abraham that buys of Ephron the Hittite, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, the son of Zohar, near Hebron, right, for 400 shekels of silver and double cave. And the field that is about it, and that buried in it Sarah his wife. And in the same book we read that after his return to Mesopotamia and his wives and his sons, Jacob pitched his tent before Salem. And a city of Shechem, which is in the land of Canaan, and that he dwelt there and brought a parcel of a field where he had spread his tent at the hand of Hamor, I don't know, the father of Shechem, for 100 lambs, and that he erected there an altar and called there upon the God of Israel. Abraham does not buy the cave of Hamor, the father of Shechem, but from Ephron, the son of Zohar. And he is not buried in Shechem, but in Hebron, which is corruptly called Arbach. Yeah? Whereas the 12 patriarchs are not buried in Arbach, but in Shechem. In the field purchased not by Abraham, but by Jacob, I postpone the solution of this delicate problem to enable those who cavil at me.
What are you reading from?
So this is from Jerome, Letters and Select Works of Letters. It's in the Letters of Jerome. So Jerome, there's a contradiction in Acts 7 verse 16. So we're going to look at it. The issue here is that they get the burial places wrong. So their bodies. This is talking about like the bodies of the patriarchs, like Abraham.
So can I reply?
Sure. And by the way, in the same letters, Jerome couldn't explain it, so he said I postponed the problem.
Yeah. So in the first place, no Christian, no even a Catholic, Eastern Orthodox, no Christian says the Church Fathers are infallible. That's the first point. The second point is Muslims say the entire Old Testament and New Testament are corrupted.
No.
Well, no. I don't mean the entire. In that there's no truth in any of it. I mean
parts of it.
Stop. So I mean that you say both books are corrupted. That's what I mean by entire. Yes. You don't say every right. So you guys are, as far as epistemic positions, a Christian does not need to say that everything in the Church Fathers or everything, even in the Old Testament, is inerrant. Right? We don't need that. So the point you're making puts us nearly on the same epistemic claim that you're on. Like we're in no worse position if Jerome couldn't necessarily parse something out. So that has no purchase. Whatever you're saying has no value to the debate of whether Christianity or Islam is true.
That's not the issue. The issue is that this is written by Saint Luke the Evangelist. He wrote Acts, right?
We believe so.
Acts. Okay. So if these people are inspired by God, and apparently they're very studied in Jewish scriptures, why did they get the burial sites wrong in terms of Abraham?
Right, because he went on at length there, and I didn't get it all. What is the main claim here? That Luke is wrong about what?
Okay, so if we go to Acts 7, verse 16, it says their bodies, talking about Abraham and the patriarchs, were brought back to Shechem and placed in the tomb that Abraham had bought from the sons of Hamor at Shechem for a certain sum of money, right? Everyone knows that Abraham is not buried there. He's buried in Hebron. And when Jerome was asked about this
how do we know that?
He couldn't explain it. I'm sorry, like, you do know that Christians even, Jews and Muslims, some of them, they go to the burial sites of Abraham, right?
So what?
Big prophet. It means that the person who wrote Acts got it wrong. He's not buried in Shechem. He's buried in Hebron.
Either one of them could have it wrong. Who knows? Did we dig his bones?
No, we know that Abraham is buried in Hebron, though.
How? How do you know that?
Abraham buried in Hebron. Tanakh.
If you don't know it, you don't know it. You got to Google it.
Yes, I gotta Google it, because even the people at the time knew that he was buried in Hebron, but whoever wrote Acts didn't know that.
Right. B2, you understand, if you concede the point, then it means that Acts isn't inspired by God, right?
I didn't concede the point. I said we don't know where he's buried, per se. Not necessarily.
Like, literally, Jews and Christians agree, though, that he's buried in Hebron. You can literally go to his burial site and see that he's buried there.
Have we dug him up?
Would you dig up a grave of a prophet?
Well, some people might. Grave robbers, perhaps.
Okay, so I want you to name me a possible place in Shechem where Abraham is buried. And apparently Christians, Jews, and Muslims just got it confused for the last 3,000, whenever Abraham existed, got it wrong on where he was buried. And apparently Luke got it right. Issue.
Sorry, guys, 1 second.
No problemo.
No, so anyway, we don't hold that everything that was ever written in the Old Testament is necessarily vertical any more than you do, right? So again, we're on the same exact
you agree that the Tanakh has been, like, not everything in it is true?
Well, we're not committed to saying every line in there is accurate. I'm not, anyway.
Wow, okay, so this isn't even the Old Testament, though. This is talking about Acts. So you're saying that Acts got it right.
No, but Acts could be right, and the other could be wrong.
So he's actually buried in Shechem and not in Hebron?
But Jesus
they could be referring to the same thing for all I know. I'm not an expert in this field.
Shechem is not talking about Hebron.
Why don't you post your source here, and I will evaluate it, but I don't know the difference between these places, per se.
Sure, because they're different names.
But I mean, it could be a copying error. Here's the thing: like, Christians don't hang their entire epistemology on the idea that there's never been a copying error or an error. Like, we don't do that. We take the cumulative case of all the historical evidence and we look at it objectively. We look at history. Like, you guys have to make this claim that there's never been a corruption in the Quran. Now, I did not come prepared today. I did not come prepared today to point out all the corruptions and mistakes in the Quran, which other people have pointed out. They may be true, they may not be true. We can't hash that out right now. So I don't think we're going to decide the truth of Christianity or Islam on the basis of whether there's errors, right? So I'll leave that to the side. Is there any other objections?
Wait, so are you admitting that there's errors in the scripture?
I would say I don't think there's any errors in Acts. But
okay. So, but here I even just found the verse. So if we look at Genesis 49, verse 31, it says, "Then Abraham, removed his tent and came and dwelt in the land of Mamre, I don't know how to say that, which is in Hebron, right? Hebron, and built there an altar unto the Lord." Yeah. So obviously Shechem is not in Hebron. They're different cities.
Listen. What if his body was moved and nobody recorded it?
That would be quite a leap of faith to disagree.
It's not a leap. It's not a leap of any faith. It's just a possibility, right?
Okay, so are we going to hinge our theology on possibilities?
Well, I'm saying we shouldn't hinge our theology on silly contradictions that you think you found that don't mean anything to whether Christianity or Islam is true.
It's clearly a contradiction, though.
Well, okay. I would say there's many ways out of that contradiction, right? It could be a copying error.
I'm going to dip out of the debate, but can I have a real quick conclusion before I leave?
Yeah, please.
All right. Anyway, I just want Christians, if they're here, any Christians are here, other than B3, just to walk away understanding that you don't need a blood sacrifice to get salvation. You don't need someone dying on the cross. All you need, just as Adam did, turn to God, ask Him for forgiveness, and He will forgive you. All right. So I'll let Abu Base and B3 continue discussing. I'm going to go now.
So it's nice to talk to you, and thank you for your cordiality, politeness, and all that.
Sure, no problem. You guys can, I'm going to go, since it's just going to be a 1v1, I guess. I'll let you guys continue on.
I'm sure we could wrap it up in the next 20 minutes there.
Sure.
Well, we want to be done by the top of the hour.
All right, so 12 minutes then. So are you done with your objections? I have my own.
Sure.
We'll do 6 minutes of my objections, and then we'll do a 3-minute closing statements each, if you like that.
That's fine.
All right. Are the hadiths reliable?
Some are and some aren't. Depends on the isnad, which I explained.
How do you know which ones are reliable?
I already explained that. It depends on how many chains of narration they have, and it depends on who's in the chain.
Okay. What miracles did Muhammad do?
One, he split the moon, which even the mushriki and the polytheists admitted to. He also was given a bowl of very little food, but was able to feed multitudes of people. Kind of like what is the verse where Jesus was given a bowl of fish or bread, and then he's able to feed a whole bunch of masses.
Sure. Okay. Well, I don't know the verse from memory, but if you say he did it. Is that in the hadith or is that in the Quran?
That's in the hadith.
Is that in the reliable or the not reliable hadith?
Reliable.
Okay, where is Muhammad now?
Muhammad Sallallahu? He's currently, in this dunya, he's dead.
What does that mean?
That means he's dead and lived a human life like everyone else.
Well, I've talked to other Muslims. They say he's under the earth in Hades. Where do you say he is?
No. Wallah alim, there's not a single Muslim, I swear to God, there's not a single Muslim who says that Muhammad Sallallahu is in hell right now or Hades. Not a single one, so that's not true.
No, I don't mean hell. I mean he's just under the ground. That's what Muslims have told me, Sunnis.
Okay, sure, yeah, he's under the ground, he's buried.
Do you say he's in heaven with the virgins? Do you say he's with God? Do you say he's under the ground with?
He also was given a bowl of very little food, but was able to feed multitudes of people. Kind of like what is the verse where Jesus was given a bowl of fish or bread, and then he's able to feed a whole bunch of masses.
Sure. Okay. Well, I don't know the verse from memory, but if you say he did it. Is that in the hadith or is that in the Quran?
That's in the hadith.
Is that in the reliable or the not reliable hadith?
Reliable.
Okay, where is Muhammad now?
Muhammad Sallallahu? He's currently, in this dunya, he's dead.
What does that mean?
That means he's dead and lived a human life like everyone else.
Well, I've talked to other Muslims. They say he's under the earth in like Hades. Like, where do you say he is?
No. Wallah alim. There's not a single Muslim, I swear to God, there's not a single Muslim who says that Muhammad ﷺ is in hell right now or Hades. Not a single one, so that's not true.
No, I don't mean hell. I mean he's just under the ground. That's what Muslims have told me, Sunnis.
Okay, sure, yeah, he's under the ground. He's buried.
Do you say he's in heaven with the virgins? Do you say he's with God? Do you say he's under the ground with other people?
We say he's in heaven because there's literally a surah where God promises him the water of Kawthar. Yeah, so that means that he's obviously promised heaven.
Okay, just give me 1 second. I'm going through my notes here. So after Christ died, within 5 years, Paul stated the creed. You have hundreds of people who claim to be witnesses. Christ himself said his church will never fail and his word will be preserved. So you guys seem to come to us with some ad hoc idea that there's a whole conspiracy or everyone was deceived. And then 500-600 years later, Muhammad gets it right. So what is the basis to say that all of the people around Christ who lived with Christ and who followed Christ were wrong?
Okay, so again, we rely on the fact that your scriptures aren't preserved and it has misquotes of Tanakh, which it claims to be based on. And when we see that, that means that the writers never really understood the Tanakh. And if you claim the disciples did understand the Tanakh correctly, then they wouldn't have these errors. Thus, we come to the conclusion that they didn't write these scriptures.
Who do you think wrote them?
I don't know. Whoever didn't really understand Tanakh, though.
Now, you think there was some literary conspiracy? Everything's just... I mean, because obviously...
I don't know if there was a conspiracy. All I know is that they didn't understand Tanakh. That's all I understand.
Let's talk about something I haven't raised so far. So, maybe I raised it in the very opening statement, but after Christ was crucified, you guys deny he was crucified. You say God deceived everyone for some reason. Do you have a reason for that? What is the reason God deceived everyone about that?
He didn't deceive everyone. He specifically fooled the disbelievers who were trying to kill them. Right? So he fooled
the entire Christian church affirmed his crucifixion. All modern scholars affirm his crucifixion. So why would Allah? What was Allah's motive to deceive the world forever?
He didn't deceive the world. Maybe he deceived what will become the Christian world because they were all pagans, and apparently they didn't want to follow the Tanakh where it says that there's only one God.
You're not listening. What was the motivation to make him appear to have been crucified? What is the motivation?
To fool the Jews who were trying to kill them.
And so somebody else was crucified?
Possibly. It says it was made to appear most likely.
What happened with Christ? What happened with him?
He was raised up to God. He wasn't killed.
So instead, you say the texts are corrupted. So when Christ says, "My church will not fail," that's all corrupted. So I'm still not clear on any criteria for how you determine which parts of the New Testament and the Old are wrong or right.
Okay, so you're saying that because of that verse, that means that Christianity is going to be preserved because it says the church will never fail.
Cool.
Okay, so if we go to Ezra, you believe Ezra is a prophet. If we go to Ezra chapter 9 and we look at verse 9, and it says, "And now for a short moment, favor has been granted by the Lord our God to leave us a remnant and give us a peg in his holy place so that our God may enlighten us and grants us a little in our servitude." You believe that this righteous remnant, which is going to remain, which is described as Israel, is talking about Christians. That's what you think.
I'm not sure you answered my question there.
No, I did. Because I'm asking you a question to answer the question. So you're saying that...
What is the criteria by which you determine which passages in the New Testament or the epistles or the Old Testament, how do you determine what's true?
There's a hadith from Muhammad ﷺ that literally says that we don't reject or accept what's in the Bible, so we just leave it, right? So, but when we look at things which agree with Islam, we'll go, okay, that was probably true. Probably. We never say it's affirmatively 100% true. And if we see something that disagrees with us, we completely reject that, though. because we don't believe that Jesus claimed to be God. If Jesus claimed to be God, then I swear people would become Benai Noach before they become Christian, because that would have meant he's a heretic.
We're going to have a follow-up debate, because Christ's claims throughout the four Gospels that he was God are very well tested, and that's why he was crucified. We can talk about that another time. That's what every Christian believes. That's what every secular scholar believes, that he was crucified for his blasphemy. So you guys don't believe that. You have your own criteria. You haven't made it clear. Let me move on a little bit here. So let's talk about the character of Muhammad and Jesus. So Jesus was born of I almost said German. Jesus was born of a virgin. He lived a sinless life. He was celibate. He fulfilled all the prophecies. He was the perfect sacrifice, the Lamb of God. There's massive typology throughout the Old and the New Testament. There's massive continuity. There's prophecy. Whereas Muhammad instead was some sort of marauder, a merchant. He married some older woman for her money, or she had a lot of money. He was well-lettered, educated. He might not have been literate himself, but he was within. They held to their faith under all persecution. They spread to the entire ancient world. Whereas Muhammad comes along much later, hundreds of years later, he conquers by force. So how do you square away the fact that Jesus has a much better character than Muhammad?
I literally don't care. So if spreading by the sword, based in epic, that is how religions and empires are spread. They're spread through spreading it by the sword. Christianity itself was spread by the sword. False. No, that's not false. Have you looked at the history of the Holy Roman Empire? How did they convert people to Christianity? By the sword.
The Holy Roman Empire is in the 1400s, the 1200s. You didn't listen to what I said. I said,
oh, so were they not right?
Hang on. Slow down. So Christianity, from its inception in the year 0 or whatever it was, all the way through Constantine, was under deep persecution from the Jews and the pagans. Anyone who was a Christian was in danger. Now, these were simple people. They were fishermen. Stop. They were Christians. They were very simple people. They were fishermen and so on. They conquered the Roman Empire without a drop of blood. Not one drop. They were martyrs. So the entire Roman Empire at that time, and this was the height of sophistication. Every philosophical school, from the skeptics to the Stoics to the Epicureans to the Platonists, the Neoplatonists, the Middle Platonists, all of them, Aristotelians, they all came to Christianity under a peaceful regime. And they came to Christianity without a single sword blow. And they were legalized in the empire under Constantine. And then they took over, civilization. They preserved everything. The reason Muslims have these texts, that's why you had a golden age, the texts of Aristotle, Plato, etc. It's because Christians preserved them, monks. Whereas Muhammad, he was a marauder. He totally attacked people. He killed people. He did other things I won't even mention. And it was all spread by the sword. So how do you square the fact that Christ had an immaculate character of sinlessness, whereas Muhammad was just some guy who seemed to kill people and force his creed on others?
Okay. So, again, if we're going to bring the argument that Christianity is true because they were persecuted and stuff, okay, so what? The companions of Muhammad, when they were in Mecca, were persecuted. That doesn't necessitate that Islam is true. It just proves that there was persecution at the time. There's been people who've been persecuted for being Hindu, Baha'is, Zoroastrian, you name it. Doesn't prove the religion, so who cares? Again, and you have patriarchs in the Hebrew scriptures who would wage war against the polytheists. Who cares? Based in epic. Awesome. Yeah. Does that disprove them being a prophet? No. So someone killing someone else doesn't disprove their prophethood. It just means they did that. It's a moral argument which is subjective.
So the question is, Muslims hold that Muhammad had the perfect character. He was the greatest man to ever live, right?
Yeah, he's definitely a model for the Muslims, yeah.
All right. Now Christians say Christ was sinless. He was the greatest man who ever lived. So we're comparing the life of Christ to the life of Muhammad. Now Muhammad was a merchant. He married many women. I don't want to mention other things, right? We don't want to go into those. He slaughtered other people. His creed was spread by the sword. Nobody had to, with Christianity, people came to it on their own, through their own reason, through their own charity. It took over the entire Roman Empire long before it was even legalized, under vast persecution. They changed their entire belief structure. Peter was crucified upside down. Paul was beheaded. These people all faced deep persecution from the Jews and from the Romans, and they all came to Christ through voluntary. It was hundreds of years before Christianity had any slight power, whereas Muhammad was immediately a conqueror and a murderer.
No. Okay, this just shows your ignorance regarding the seerah of the life of Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Literally, for the first 13 years of his life, he was being persecuted, and his Sahaba, his companions, were being slaughtered. That doesn't prove or disprove anything. That's just a historical fact. And when the Roman Empire adopted Christianity, what do you think they did with the pagans up in northern and western Europe? They slaughtered them and forced them to convert. That's why there's so many rebellions with the barbarians. Why do you actually read history? Because you're misrepresenting it.
Now, when you said the first 13 years of his life, you mean the first 13 years after he was Muslim?
Okay,
first 13, yeah, correct.
Guys, it's the top of the hour. You should maybe wrap it up.
Closing statements, or wrap it up here?
Well, it's up to you guys if you wanted to,
I'll take a minute. If you take a minute.
Yeah, sure, that's cool.
I open, so I'll start with the closing statement. He can close. Give me 1 second here.
So I'm closing.
Yeah, you'll be the last word.
Okay.
Yeah, so again, I'll just repeat. I'm a theist because I think naturalism is absurd. Theism is obviously true. It's the most philosophically rich and historically contiguous. It's we have a whole history of philosophy that points to theism. I think the historical evidence and so on points to Christianity. Christ was the fulfillment of the Old Testament. There's tons of typology, parallels, fulfilled prophecies. As you all heard, I asked the Muslims, any prophecies in the Old Testament from Muhammad. They gave me one really bad example. In the church, in the Christian church, we have an unbroken line of continuity from Jesus and the apostles all the way through the present church, the church fathers. The crucifixion is affirmed by every secular historian. Maybe there's two on the outskirts who don't believe it. Islam denies it. He says there was some replica of him for no reason to deceive people. It's ad hoc. The character of Christ versus Muhammad is very obvious. Christianity was born at the height of the Roman Empire. It was the only people who didn't believe Christianity after a couple hundred years were called heathens because they lived out in the sticks. They lived in the woods. It was all the philosophical schools at this height of Roman peace and Greek language that converted to Christianity without a drop of blood. Islam emerged hundreds of years later among a remote and unfettered people. They had fundamental errors about Christianity that they didn't even understand because they were way off on the outskirts. Muslims say Christ is the son of, they say he's born of a virgin, he's a great prophet, but they deny everything he said. They say everyone was deceived. It's an ad hoc conspiracy theory. And there's many problems with the Islamic concept of God. He's Unitarian. He can't have love in and of himself. He's free not to create, so in his own nature, he has no love. There's a voluntarism in Islam, and that means that God could have done anything. He could have made good evil, evil good. He could have made 2 + 2 = 10. We haven't really gotten to the Trinity, so I'll just leave that for the next debate if we have another one. And I'll just say it's just obvious that if you listen to Muslim apologists, they do two things. They copy off William Lane Craig. They'll just repeat his 5 arguments. And I do understand that his Kalam argument goes back to the golden age of Islam, back when the Persians were philosophical. But aside from just copying off Lane Craig's arguments, they have no philosophy. And secondly, all they do to attack Christianity is they just borrow from atheists, new atheists, cringe atheists. So they have no philosophy. They're just copying. And, so Christianity is well attested historically, and it actually deals with the real problems. The sin of man, Christ redeems us. He comes to us in flesh, and he cleanses our sin. Whereas in Islam,
that's 2.5 minutes. Okay.
10 seconds?
Sure, go.
Right, so Christ comes and he redeems us through cleansing our sin, perfect sacrifice, and he also reunites the divine and the human nature in the creation. He resolves it. Whereas in Islam, it's just carnal pleasures. You get a bunch of virgins and you get a bunch of fruit. That's it.
All right. You got up to 3 minutes there if you want to jabber there, Abu.
Nice. All right, so I accept Islam's objectively truth. The only way that Muhammad Sallallahu could have gotten his prophecies is through God, someone who's outside space and time and is able to have all-encompassing knowledge of the future. So it's obviously God. Satan couldn't have done that. It's just stupid to say. So, in regards to comparing the character of Muhammad ﷺ to Jesus ﷺ, it's all a subjective argument. It doesn't disprove or prove anything, and subjective opinions are garbage in my opinion, so it doesn't mean anything to me. The contradictions within the New Testament and contradictions where the New Testament contradicts the Old Testament were never addressed. Thus, it disproves the credibility of the New Testament. Thus, any quotations of the Trinity in the New Testament are just thrown out the window because the book itself isn't reliable. And he even admitted that they don't even know who the real authors are. It could have probably been this, probably that. That's not what we're looking for, Chief. Again, I mean, they believe stuff that prophets can apostate. They believe that prophets can do shirk. They believe that Suleiman did shirk. They believe that Balaam, who was a Goy prophet, they believe he apostated, just disgusting stuff like that, which both Jews and Christians uphold. And in regards to saying that we get virgins to heaven, yeah, good. I like women, great. I mean, again, Christians and Jews, they agree that you get whatever you want in heaven. So again, it's just subjective argument. That doesn't mean anything. Again, the same point. He made math or murder good. It's all a hypothetical. Did he make 2 + 2 = 5? No. Did he do this? No, he didn't. So hypotheticals don't prove or disprove anything. All we say is just, yeah, it's just, we just have the reality that we have, and we just say this is what God made. We don't jump to these stupid hypothetical situations that atheists always pose. They're just nonsensical questions and statements. Thus, they're not even worthy of being addressed. There were multiple misquotations that Christians usually do, like saying that Mary's a part of the Trinity and stuff like this. This is ridiculous because it never says anything like that, which just shows that Christians don't really know much about our scriptures. But when we throw back contradictions that they have, they never really respond to it. They just say, whatever, we'll deal with it later, just like Jerome did. So, I mean, I don't even need to continue. I think it's well established that Islam is the truth. And subjective moral arguments aren't going to prove or disprove anything. I could have a heyday with subjective moral arguments in regards to the New and Old Testament. I don't go there because I don't think they disprove or prove anything. If I want to go there, I could have a heyday, but I didn't go there.
30 seconds.
So with that, I mean, and to say that Islam was spread by the sword, that was spread by the sword. They would conquer other nations. Doesn't mean they went in and slaughtered women and children in towns. Absolutely. People get the false impression of this. Most people actually came to Islam on their own volition. Empires, like kingdoms, will come into Islam on their own volition. So it's spread by both by the sword and the message. Who cares? If it's the truth, it's the truth. I mean, again, even in the Old Testament, the prophets used to spread their message of monotheism amongst polytheists by killing them, by war. Again, it's a subjective moral argument. If God makes it good and moral, that's what's good and moral. Again, these subjective moral arguments don't do anything, and they're just like facetious. They don't mean anything. Again, next time Christians want to debate, being objective stuff, not subjective stuff.
Alrighty then. That was pretty good. People were pretty cordial. I didn't have to hardly do anything.
Epic.
Hardly had to do anything. Get my grammar straight. All right, then. I don't know what people want to do now. I guess we can unmute. And what's that?
Not in reply. Can I say a quick word? Not in reply, just as a word.
Sure.
Well, thank you for hosting. It was a good, cordial debate, and I think we have a lot in common. Christians, Muslims. We both believe in God. We both believe in the Abrahamic God. We have difference of views on that. We have difference of views on history, but these guys are really cool. They're really smart. And thank you again for hosting. And at least we're not cringe atheists, right?
Yeah, exactly. I would like to say the same thing. This is like one of the first debates where the other parties were actually willing to discuss and not yell over each other. It was very nice. It was very nice debating these two. So, yeah, I like that. I like more debates like this.
Not all atheists are cringe, by the way.
I know. I'm just kidding. Well, I'm going to take a short break, but I'll come back if people have questions and stuff.
Cool. Alrighty. Everybody else can jabber if they want to, I guess, ask questions.
Wait, so is this a Q&A?
Well, I don't know if people want to do it. I wasn't aware there was going to be anything like that, but if people want have time and want to hang around, I don't see why it would be a problem. Looks like lots of people are in text, though.
No one wants to ask questions. I mean, anyone can ask a question. It's cool.
I guess I got to unmute some people here. Hang on a second. I guess maybe I have to unmute people here. I don't know. I didn't know. It's not red, so.
I must say that, like, especially to Christians, if, like, this is a good example of how you should, like, debate. You know, not, like, yelling and, you know, screaming over each other, which a lot of debates fall into. It should be something like this, yeah.
Well, anybody who needs to be unmuted, I can just unmute here, I guess. I'll just look through the list. I wonder why they're not red for me. That's weird. Maybe some people are server muted. I don't know why they are. I guess one of the easiest ways is I don't know if this room is set up that way. It doesn't show up that way for me, but then I'm an admin, so. Barbari, I thought I unmuted you.
Yeah.
Are we all moving to general VC? Yeah.
Well, it might be a good thing to do. I'm going to go there.
All right, everyone go to general VC. If anyone has questions, just go over to general.
Scholarly opinion. What's my opinion on what?
Your scholarly opinion, to be specific, on like cheese.
On cheese? I don't like cheese. It doesn't taste good in my opinion, so I don't like it.
You have to change your mental state. This is acceptable.
What? He said mental state, but I couldn't catch what else he said.
Yeah, this isn't acceptable. That's what I said.
Okay.
Anyways, this guy doesn't like cheese.
I never liked cheese. Even when I was a kid, it didn't taste good. I don't like a lot of things, and that does include cheese.
All right,
and
if nobody has any questions on the debate, I'm going to get going.
I have a question. So
yeah, go.
And so in the view back when I was Muslim, I used to think that Trinity didn't make sense, right? But then, I started going to debating Christians and stuff, and whenever I talked to them, it kind of made sense to me, right? But what I want to know, is there verses in the Bible that confirm that God is 3 in 1?
Well, in the New Testament, yeah, there's it says the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit are one. They also say in Acts, go and baptize in those names. They also say in the prologue to the Gospel of John, the Word was with God, the Word was God, so at least you have two there, right? So in the Old Testament, we already broached this topic earlier. God says we made man and women, right? There's a lot of hints, and there's a lot of things that had to be hashed out later by councils, right?
I see, man. I see. All right. Thank you.
The cheese they used to get here was like these. The cheese
an ex-Muslim.
What's up, homie?
Were you a Shia or a Sunni before?
That's a good question, man. I was an Ahmadi. I'm joking. I was a Sunni.
Sunni. Okay, so did you grow up in a liberal household?
No, I guess not.
Okay, so did they teach you the 6 articles of faith?
No.
Okay, that explains it. Yeah, that already explains it. Yep.
Yeah, probably. All right.
Guys, if you want to do a follow-up where we could, the only regret I have was that we didn't cover enough ground. So if you want to do a follow-up sometime, we'll do it. But I'm going to go.
Yeah, we can do a follow-up.
Yeah, we can do a follow-up now.
No, not now.
Super cool stuff, and we didn't get into any negative shit, so that's good. No, not now. No, we got other things to do, right? All right, guys. I'll see you later.
Later.
See you, man.
See you later.
That's epic.
That's really epic.
So, Abu Base, you think you're gonna debate the guy again?
Sure. He was like one of the only cordial debaters I've ever debated with. So yeah, I could definitely debate him again.
You know, Abu Base, before you joined the debate, they were some atheists were shitting on you. They were saying you just ignore. Yeah, they were saying they were just biased and don't agree with anyone and this and that.
Atheists said that I don't agree with anyone and I'm biased.
Not exactly, but they were mainly just shitting on you.
Okay, that doesn't matter. Atheists believe in nothing and believe that we came from a primordial soup. They're retards, so I don't really care.
Bruh, that's so mean.
I did that just for you.
That was I didn't
Abu Base,
want
next
that.
time you make soup, remember that atheists think that you came from that.
Yes, that's what they believe. That's what they believe.
Yes, next time you're sick and you have to make chicken.
And then Delusi opened this camera. Delusi, you showed your leg, man. Show your face.
Yes, you showed your leg.
Delusi, show your face. I saw part of that. Show your face, man, all of it.
Man, yeah. How many times
Who
have
pinged
you
me? Oh, Franklin D. Roosevelt.
Allah, hey, puss. I can't even hear you, bud. Like, legit.
Yeah.
Your voice is
okay.
so low.
Okay, is this better?
Yeah, it's so better, man.
Okay, so
Delusi, show your face.
question was, how many times have you converted from Muslim to ex-Muslim?
2 times?
2 times?
Yeah, I guess if you can show me evidence that I did it more than 2, I'm happy to see it.
Yeah, I don't think I will.
Yeah, because you
Wait,
have
2
none.
times?
Yeah,
No,
2 times.
I have none.
Two whole times, guys. I
Actually,
found
a lot.
I
mean, it's like 2 isn't that big of a number, but
Wait.
I did it.
Yes.
I have an objective
Why?
argument.
Don't you want to stop extremism?
I don't believe jihad is. I believe. I believe.
So when the Quran says "Jahadu fi sabilillah," what do you do with that?
I don't know, man. I don't fucking know. I don't debate.
Man, this guy's
Reasons Murtads have left Islam. If God real, why bad thing happen? Yo, you know what? Answer the question. The one that for this sent. If God is real, then why would He let bad things happen?